Snow falls softly over a bustling city street illuminated by festive lights, while joyful Christmas music fills the cold winter air. A happy little family walks down the sidewalk together, with a young girl excitedly telling her parents that she had the best day ever. However, their path is suddenly blocked by a towering young man in a dark winter coat, standing motionless in the middle of the walkway. Looking up in complete awe at his massive frame, the little girl can't help but point out just how huge he really is. Stepping aside to let the family pass, our MC quietly wonders why he's always the one shrinking back to make room for other people. Walking alone through the festive crowd, he realizes it makes sense, since he is literally the only person on this entire street who is all by himself. Heading down toward the subway entrance, he continues blending into the background while surrounded by cheerful couples and groups of friends. But just as he is about to go down the stairs, something unexpected catches his attention out of the corner of his eye. Turning around, he notices someone else who seems completely isolated in the cold, standing near a man dressed in a Santa suit. Looking closer, he sees the homeless Santa kneeling flat on the freezing ground, bowing deeply to anyone passing by. Next to him sits a simple handwritten sign reading, "Tell Santa your wish," and though our guy usually ignores these things, something makes him stop today. Deciding to approach, he kneels down right beside the man, suddenly remembering that today happens to be Christmas Eve. It's the exact same day he was left all alone in the world after losing both of his parents in a tragic accident, so he opens his wallet and pulls out some cash. Handing over the money along with a warm tuna mayo rice ball, our MC kindly tells the man to take the food while it's still fresh. He gently places the meal and cash onto the cardboard sign on the frozen pavement, preparing to leave after doing a good deed. But before he can even stand up, the Santa suddenly grabs both of his hands with shocking speed, shouting out how kind of a soul he is. Dropping to his knees while clinging tightly to our MC's hands, the Santa desperately begs to repay his kindness by granting him any wish he desires. Completely creeped out by the bizarre situation, our hero immediately regrets breaking his usual routine and tells the guy to let him go. However, when he tries to pull away, he realizes the Santa's grip is insanely powerful, clamping down around his wrists like an iron vice. Despite never being physically overpowered by anyone before in his life, our MC finds himself completely immobilized, unable to move even an inch. Looking up with desperate, watery eyes, the Santa begs him to make a wish, explaining that he literally cannot return to Santa Village unless he grants one. Realizing he won't be freed otherwise, our protagonist asks if he'll finally let him go if he gives him a wish, and Santa eagerly agrees. Reluctantly giving in to the bizarre request, our MC takes a deep breath and prepares to state his demand. He casually asks to win the lottery jackpot, but Santa instantly rejects it, demanding to hear his true heart's desire instead. Pausing for a moment, the young man looks down solemnly as he reflects on what he genuinely wants deep down inside. Remembering the lonely memorial hall where he mourned his parents, he knows that all he really wants is a real family that will stay by his side and never leave. Opening up, he softly admits that his true wish is to have a lovely wife and a daughter as ridiculously cute as a mongoose. Hearing this, Santa deeply inhales the air with dramatic emotion, sensing the profound solitude that our MC has carried for so many years. With a bright smile, Santa claims he is truly lucky today to have met someone whose lonely soul matches his own so closely. Suddenly, Santa's eyes turn blood red with terrifying intensity, wildly promising to find him a wife as pure as snow and a daughter who adores him. Screaming at the top of his lungs, Santa prays with frantic energy that our hero lives a happy life, sending absolute chills right down our MC's spine. Terrified out of his mind by the Santa's crazy transformation, our protagonist rips his hands free and bolts down the street as fast as he can. As he runs away in sheer panic, Santa shouts after him that all the Santas in Santa Village are rooting for his wish to come true. Safe inside a subway car a short while later, our MC sits down and rubs his sore wrist, still shocked by the insane physical strength that weird Santa possessed. Sitting alone in the quiet train, he shakes his head, trying to convince himself that the entire encounter was just a bizarre incident with a lunatic. Yet as he stares quietly out the subway window, a gentle sense of longing fills his expression. Glancing over at a heartwarming advertisement showing a loving family together, he admits to himself that the real reason he made that wish was because he wants to be happy too. Closing his eyes as the train rattles down the tracks, he quietly sighs, wishing for a warm life just like everyone else. But out of nowhere, his vision fades into pitch darkness as a strange, mysterious purple mist begins to swirl around him. Waking up groggy and shirtless in a freezing environment, our confused MC groans in pain, wondering why it suddenly feels so cold and what that strange smell is. Opening his eyes in total disbelief, our protagonist gasps in complete shock as he tries to process what is happening. Looking around, he finds himself locked inside a wooden cage mounted on a horse-drawn carriage moving through an unfamiliar medieval town at night. Shivering in nothing but his underwear with his ankle heavy in iron shackles, he panics as he realizes he has no idea where he is. Seeing other prisoners locked up beside him in similar conditions, he wonders if he somehow got transported back to the Middle Ages. Hearing heavy footsteps approach, he turns his head and catches the guards muttering in a completely gibberish language. Staring at the soldiers clad in full-plate armor holding spears, he quickly realizes he can't understand a single word they are saying. Taking in his surroundings, he feels like he's on a medieval movie set, surrounded by strangers speaking an unknown tongue without another Asian face in sight. Struggling to tell whether this nightmare is a dream or reality, a terrifying realization slowly settles into his mind. He comes to the unbelievable conclusion that he has somehow been transported into an entirely different world. Trembling uncontrollably from the freezing cold, he lies on the hard floor of the cage with his chained feet shivering in agony. Looking across the cage, he notices a motionless prisoner lying curled up in the corner and wonders if the man has already passed away. Reaching out with a heavy heart, he gently apologizes to the deceased inmate before taking the clothes off the man's body to survive. Slipping into the ragged tunic, our hero covers his bare skin just to keep himself from freezing to death in the bitter cold. Lying flat on his back, he remembers Santa's insane promise to use all his powers to grant his ultimate wish. Bitterly staring up at the roof, he questions if being a miserable prisoner is Santa's twisted definition of true happiness. Desperate for an escape from this living nightmare, he prays to wake up if this is all just a terrible dream. As days pass, he remains trapped inside the moving cage as the carriage travels endlessly toward an unknown destination. During the long trip, he manages to figure out that every single captive inside this carriage, including himself, is a slave. Watching the armored guards closely, he slowly begins to understand the true reason why they are being dragged around the countryside. Looking over his fellow captives, he realizes the soldiers are simply hauling them around to sell them off to the highest bidder. Whenever the carriage stops in a new village, the heavy lock on the cage door is unlatched with a loud click. Local village leaders line up the slaves outside, carefully picking out the healthiest ones to purchase for manual labor. Though it hurts his pride to admit he has become a slave, watching others get bought actually gives him a small glimmer of hope. Standing up inside the cage, he realizes getting bought is his only chance to escape this hellish transport, confident his good physique will get him picked quickly. Looking out with anticipation, he genuinely expects to be sold right away so he can finally leave this cage behind. But as village after village passes without anyone buying him, that small spark of hope quickly turns into overwhelming despair. Watching the carriage roll down yet another dusty road, he sinks into deep misery, wondering how his life spiraled out of control. Collapsing onto the wooden floor of the cage, he loses all motivation to keep going and wonders if there's even a point in living like this. In his darkest moment, he remembers his mother's gentle words from his childhood, reminding young Jo-won to always work hard no matter what. Recalling her loving face asking if he understood, Jo-won feels a deep ache in his heart as memories of his past flood in. Lying helpless on the cold floor, Jo-won silently cries out to his late parents, wondering if he even has the strength to endure this suffering. Bitterly remembering Santa shouting about granting his wish for happiness, Jo-won feels nothing but rage and betrayal toward that promise. Glancing down at a sharp metal fork lying forgotten on the carriage floor, his hand begins to tremble with dark intentions. Snatching up the metal fork with a fierce grip, he decides he's completely done with both this cursed world and his old life. Driven to absolute desperation, Jo-won decides that the only true happiness left for him right now is dying to end his pain. He presses the sharp tines of the fork against his own neck until a drop of blood appears, but he hesitates right before taking his own life. Remembering his true desire to find a family and be happy, Jo-won realizes deep down that he doesn't want to die in a miserable place like this. Lowering the fork from his throat, he lets out an exhausted sigh, choosing to endure the pain for a little longer. Just then, an unexpected hand reaches through the iron bars of the cage, holding out a warm, freshly baked loaf of bread. Looking up in complete shock, Jo-won sees a beautiful young woman with long, golden hair smiling warmly at him through the bars as she offers him food. Reaching through the heavy bars of a prisoner cage, a young woman hands a piece of bread to a weary man inside while speaking in an ancient language. Hiding timidly behind her dress, a cute little blonde girl with golden eyes nervously peeks through the wooden bars at the captive prisoner. The man gratefully accepts the food while kneeling inside the transport wagon, though his silver fork lies quietly on the wooden floor nearby. The scene then shifts to a quiet and secluded wooden cottage tucked safely away inside a lush, peaceful forest. Inside the humble home, the brown-haired woman and the tiny girl sit across from each other at a simple table for a quiet meal. Hearing the child complain about being hungry, the woman kindly offers her own bowl of warm soup so the girl can have extra. However, the clever little child points back at her, pointing out that if she is hungry, then Lizzie must be starving as well. Refusing to eat alone, the sweet girl carefully pushes one of the soup bowls back across the table so they can share. Touched by her thoughtful gesture, Lizzie gives her a warm, affectionate smile and agrees that both of them should eat together. But their heartwarming quiet moment is suddenly shattered when aggressive pounding rattles the front door, with the village chief demanding entry from outside. Startled by the abrupt knocking, the frightened little girl hugs Lizzie tightly while the village chief calls out from outside, telling them not to open the door and just listen. Through the window, they watch the chief walk away after ordering Lizzie to bring food for the soldiers to the village entrance first thing at daybreak. Overwhelmed by anxiety, Lizzie panics inside, frantically wondering what she can do since she never expected the village leaders to make a decision this fast. Terrifying memories grip her mind as she holds the child close, horrified by the thought of being beaten and abused all over again. Looking down at the anxious child clinging to her chest, Lizzie knows in her heart that even though they haven't known each other long, she can't just abandon her. The heartbreaking sight of the innocent little girl tearfully sniffing only adds to Lizzie's overwhelming guilt and fear. Trembling uncontrollably with fear, Lizzie struggles the heavy realization that simply fleeing with the child is nearly impossible. Tears stream down her cheeks as she clutches her chest, realizing she could never forgive herself if she left this helpless child all alone again. Unable to hold back her distress any longer, the poor little girl breaks down sobbing hysterically in Lizzie's arms. Lizzie remains completely stunned in shock, recalling the chief's cruel decree that she will be forced to marry one of the captured men tomorrow and move to the mountain. Sitting on the wooden floor of the dim cabin, the young woman cries uncontrollably, completely overwhelmed by the crushing weight of her despair. Alone in the quiet room with her head bowed, she stares into the darkness and wonders with absolute dread what is going to happen to her now. She hugs her knees tightly against her chest, desperately praying that she will never have to go through that terrible nightmare ever again. Shifting her gaze toward the corner of the room, her panicked expression softens into sadness as her thoughts turn to the helpless child nearby. Resting on a thin floor mat is a little blonde girl clutching a patched teddy bear, and she knows the poor child shares that exact same terror. She's just a 5-year-old child who doesn't even have a name yet, left behind as the daughter of the brutal man who recently died. Thinking back to how her tragic story began, she remembers her own father heartlessly selling her off for nothing more than a single rabbit's skin. Trembling on the ground as heavy footsteps approached, she realized she was traded off simply because she had arrived later than expected. That petty delay was his only reason to strike her, forcing the horrifying reality to sink in that her miserable life was only just beginning. On the very day she arrived at this secluded hut, before she could even unpack her belongings, she was savagely beaten by the man chosen to be her husband. Lying bruised and exhausted on the wooden floor after another beating, she lets out a heavy, faint sigh as her strength fades away. As she lay there helplessly, the little blonde girl cautiously tiptoes over to her, hesitating with every single step. Barely opening her eyes, the injured woman looks up weakly from the floor to see who is approaching her. Standing right above her in this living hell was the young girl, looking down with pure worry in her eyes. Without saying a word, the gentle child quietly sits down on the wooden floor right beside her battered body. She softly reaches out her tiny hand to comfort her, proving to be the only angelic soul in the world who ever showed her kindness. Sometime later, the abusive husband went into the mountains and never returned, leaving just the woman and the child alone in the cabin. Villagers eventually reported that wolves had devoured him at the hunting grounds, confirming he would never torment them again. Hearing the news of his death brought her a sudden sense of relief, knowing that her terrible nightmare was finally over. But almost immediately, that temporary feeling of relief turned into a deep, agonizing sense of dread about what lies ahead. In a harsh world like this, a woman without a husband is considered completely defenseless, like a sheep left outside the fence. Holding the little girl's hand tightly, she walks through the village while reflecting on how vulnerable their situation really is. Suddenly, the excited little girl points toward the road ahead, telling her to look at what's coming toward them. Curious, the young girl notices a large wooden cage carriage being hauled down the dirt path. The woman turns her attention toward the approaching transport, curious to see what is being brought into the village. Looking closer, she spots a heavily bound man locked inside the iron cage, kneeling silently in the shadows. Shock and instinctive fear immediately fill her eyes as her traumatic memories resurface all at once. She remembers how her late husband used to brutally beat her, screaming that she was useless and couldn't do anything right. She recalls the terrifying moments when he would loom over her, holding his eating fork while radiating pure hostility. He had angrily mocked her for getting close to the child so quickly, making them both tremble in absolute terror. Slamming his fork down, her abusive husband claimed they were ruining his appetite while standing menacingly above them. The traumatic memory of that dropped fork reflecting in her eyes still haunts her to this very day. Staring at the caged prisoner, she can't help but see the haunting shadow of her abusive past in his figure. Trying to push her fear aside, she reaches down into a basket and picks up a fresh loaf of bread. Holding the bread in her hands, she stands alongside the little girl, deciding to show a small act of kindness. She approaches the wooden cage and gently extends the loaf of bread through the iron bars toward the prisoner. Kneeling before the cage, she offers the food to the captive man, while the timid child hides safely behind her skirt. Just then, an elder from the village walks up to them and greets her, interrupting the quiet moment. Handing her a bowl, the elder tells her to head straight back to the village while they handle the incoming soldiers. Smiling gently, she agrees and tells the little girl it's time to go, while the elder stays behind near the prisoner. As they walk away, the little girl glances back one last time, looking at the caged man with quiet curiosity. Left alone inside the cage, the prisoner stares blankly down at the loaf of bread, visibly exhausted and worn out. Slowly raising the bread to his mouth, he takes a bite, deeply grateful for the unexpected act of compassion. Moments later, the armed guards unlock the cage door and harshly order the prisoner to get out. Without any mercy, the guards kick him forcefully, shoving him hard out of the wooden transport onto the ground. Landing roughly in the dirt, the man grunts in pain, yet he still firmly holds onto the piece of bread she gave him. Nearby in the village square, an official gathers the captive men and announces that the ceremony is about to begin. The guards draw their knives and cut the hands of the bound prisoners, letting their blood drip down. Blood smears across official documents as the tied prisoners kneel on the grass, trembling from pain and fear. As the guards hold up the blood-stained papers, magical energy flares up, making the protagonist wonder what kind of spell this is. Breathing heavily from exhaustion, the man wipes his forehead and wonders what kind of strange world he has ended up in. Meanwhile, one of the armored guards leans in and whispers in a strange language directly to the village elder. The elder steps forward and looks down at the bound man kneeling before him on the dirt road. The captive protagonist looks up at the elder with a deeply confused expression, unsure of what they plan to do with him. The scene then shifts to a quiet wooden house located on the outskirts of the village. Inside the hut, a large tied sack of supplies rests on the floor, provided to help them get by. An older village woman explains that the village will provide food for now, but warns that her new husband doesn't speak their language. The old woman candidly admits that nobody liked her late husband, and they only tolerated him because they needed a mountain keeper. She adds that the man she is marrying this time seems different, as the soldiers mention he might be a former commoner. While holding the sleeping child, the young woman listens carefully as she is told her new husband may look intimidating, but has surprisingly soft hands. Reassuring her, the older woman points out that his hands look clean of violence, and since mountain keepers can hunt, they should love well. Lowering her gaze, she softly responds that she doesn't care about living a wealthy or comfortable life. All she truly wants and hopes for is that her new husband won't turn out to be another violent monster. Watching the little girl sleep peacefully, she thinks that as long as the man leaves the two of them alone, that would be more than enough. Suddenly, loud, aggressive pounding echoes against the front door as someone calls out for her to open up. Startled by the sudden noise, her eyes widen in panic as she instinctively reaches back to protect the sleeping child. Peering toward the window, she is shocked to see the village elder standing outside alongside a massive, intimidating figure. The front door bursts open as the elder steps inside, announcing that he has finally brought the man she is supposed to marry. Staring in absolute disbelief, she whispers her husband's name as instructions are barked outside to bring him in. Stepping through the doorway, our protagonist looks around the unfamiliar cabin, wondering where on earth they've brought him. Seeing his bruised and battered state, she panics inwardly, wondering why they keep dragging a severely injured man around. Taking in his towering, muscular frame, she gasps silently as she realizes this giant of a man is her new husband. Completely intimidated by his massive stature, she breaks out in a cold sweat, thinking she has never seen anyone so gigantic in her life. Noticing someone staring at him, our protagonist turns his gaze downward with a puzzled look. Recognizing her face instantly, he realizes with surprise that she is the kind woman who gave him bread while he was caged. Seeing her trembling violently in terror, he wonders why she looks so petrified just looking at him. Impatiently grabbing his arm, the village elder snaps at him for just standing around doing nothing. Pulling him forward by force, the elder leads him directly toward where the terrified woman is sitting. The elder positions the tall man right beside her, causing the woman and the hiding child to shrink back even further in apprehension. Telling them not to be so stiff since they're getting married, the elder forcefully grabs their hands to bring them together. Snapping their hands together into a wedding handshake, the elder declares the arrangement official. Remarking that they actually look like a proper married couple standing side by side, the elder smiles proudly. Completely clueless about what they are saying, our MC senses the grim atmosphere and suddenly suspects a terrifying realization. He vividly remembers that scamming Santa, promising him a pure, hearted wife and a loving daughter who respects her father. Santa had described his future bride as being gentle like a fluffy white rabbit, and his daughter as a fierce little mongoose guarding her territory. Staring at them in disbelief, he wonders if that sketchy Santa was actually legit and actually granted his wish. While she trembles, she thinks that while she wanted a wish granted, being dragged across worlds into this situation was a bit extreme. Remembering all the brutal beatings, cages, and trauma he had to endure, he angrily thinks Santa could have skipped the extreme pain. A dark, menacing shadow falls over his face as his internal rage reaches a boiling point. Vowing with absolute fury that if he ever runs into that wretched Santa again, he is going to murder him on sight. Seeing his terrifying aura flare up, the woman and child shake in absolute terror, mistaking his murderous rage towards Santa for hostility toward them. Later on, outside the cabin, the villagers try to communicate them using their incomprehensible language. Completely unable to understand a single word they are saying, our MC feels like his sanity is rapidly slipping away. One of the local men steps closer, gesturing with a serious expression as if trying to make a point. The man reaches out and presses his hand against the protagonist's chest, prompting a confused reaction. They grab each other's hands to shake, but the grip instantly tightens into a brutal test of strength. As the local man cries out in pain from the bone-crushing pressure, our MC wonders if shattering hands is just the standard greeting here. Narrowing his eyes with a suspicious look, he starts evaluating the hidden strength of the locals. Letting go abruptly, he watches the man collapse backward onto the dirt, completely overwhelmed by his hidden physical power. Seeing his strength demonstrated, the village elder smiles and claps approval while the local man nurses his red, swollen hand. The elder then walks over holding a bow and arrow, offering the weapon directly to our protagonist. As the elder demonstrates how to hold the bow, he hands the weapon over for him to try. Holding the bow in his hands, our MC wonders why he was given a weapon, though he senses they aren't looking for a fight. To explain what he wants, the elder suddenly puts his hands on top of his head like rabbit ears and crouches down. Watching the old man enthusiastically hop around mimicking a rabbit, our MC slowly realizes what he is trying to communicate. Knocking an arrow onto the bowstring, he realizes that the elder simply wants him to prove his hunting skills. Seeing him knock the arrow so naturally, the elder waves his hands frantically in alarm to stop him. The old man points frantically toward a nearby patch of grass, shouting it into aim for an actual wild rabbit. A cute white rabbit sits quietly in the clearing, completely unaware that it has become their target. As the elder screams at him to shoot right now, our protagonist panics internally because he has never held a bow in his life. Aiming down the arrow, he doubts his chances, knowing that even basic archery takes immense practice for a complete beginner. Channeling his focus, he lets go of the string, unleashing the arrow straight toward the target. The arrow flies with immense speed and force, narrowly grazing past the terrified rabbit and blasting into the dirt behind it. Even though he missed, the elder claps wildly in all of the raw power, leaving our MC utterly baffled. After witnessing his incredible strength, the elder signals that it's time to head back toward the village. Turning around, our MC catches sight of his gentle new bride walking down the forest path alongside her little daughter. Staring at her graceful figure as she approaches, a subtle blush appears on his face. Looking closely at her warm, kind eyes, he internalizes the reality that this lovely woman is now officially his wife. As her gaze meets his heart suddenly skips a beat, fluttering nervously inside his chest. Overwhelmed by embarrassment, his entire face turns bright red and steams like a kettle, confusing everyone around him. A short while later, they sit together on a blanket in the clearing to share a quiet meal outdoors. Politely bowing her head, his new bride gently hands him a warm bowl of freshly prepared soup. Taking the bowl into his hands, he admires the rich, hearty stew packed with meat and vegetables. As he takes his first bite, both the woman and the little girl watch him nervously to see his reaction. Devouring the food enthusiastically, he drinks directly from the bowl, startling the two of them with his appetite. Finishing the delicious meal, he sits quietly in reflection as the warmth of the food settles in. A gentle smile touches his lips as he reflects on the concept of family, a word he was never accustomed to back home. From his middle school years up until turning 30, waking up completely alone in an empty apartment was his everyday reality. Looking at the cautious woman and the innocent child eating beside her, he realizes that he finally has a family of his own. Though the sequence of events was completely absurd, he admits to himself that after all the suffering he endured, the order doesn't matter. Sighing deeply as he looks up at the sunny sky, he thinks that while he still wants to beat up Santa, he feels a genuine sense of gratitude for finally bestowing this precious family upon him. The very next day, things begin moving quickly as they gather their belongings and hit the forest trail. Carrying a massive sack of supplies over his shoulders, our MC periodically glances back to check on his new family. Noticing both the woman and the little girl heavily panting from fatigue, he worries that the steep hike is draining their stamina. Frustrated by the language barrier, he groans inwardly at his inability to even ask if they need to rest. He vows to learn the local language and acclimate to this new world as quickly as possible so he can protect them. A childhood memory resurfaces of his mother telling him that whenever he wants to protect someone, he must never hesitate. She reminded him that true protection requires immediate action without a single moment of doubt. Sweat drips down his neck as he pauses for a moment, making up his mind about what to do next. He turns around and strides back toward the two of them, startling her as his large frame approaches. The little girl bursts into tears, terrified by his sudden approach as big drops of sorrow roll down her cheeks. Gentle in his posture, he crouches down before them and reassures her softly that he is about to pick them up. She recoils in terror, holding her chest tightly as traumatizing memories of physical abuse flash through her mind. Falling to her knees, she desperately begs him in her local language, mistaking his gesture for incoming violence. Watching her mother plead on the ground, the little girl whimpers pitifully, completely heartbroken and scared. Feeling a pang of guilt, our MC realizes his stern, straight expression is terrifying them simply by standing near them. Apologizing softly under his breath, he gently reaches out his arms to scoop both of them up together. In one smooth motion, he wraps his powerful arms around them, lifting both mother and daughter off the ground. Shocked by his sheer strength, the woman gasps as she finds herself resting safely in his arms alongside her child. Carrying the massive pack on his back, he effortlessly holds his new bride on one side and the little girl on the other. Standing tall and sturdy like a fortress, he comfortably holds both of them in a warm, protective embrace. Elevated high off the ground, the little girl gazes up in wonder, letting out a cute chirp of excitement. Looking down at how high up she is, the child marvels at the incredible vantage point from his shoulders. Telling her to hold on tight, he smiles reassuringly while she clings to his shoulders with a deep blush. As he strides briskly through the forest, he notices that carrying both of them along with his gear feels surprisingly weightless. Realizing how light and malnourished they are, he vows to master hunting quickly so he can feed them hearty meals every day. Knowing how much work lies ahead, he mentally prepares himself for a busy future while she gazes softly at his face. A single bead of sweat rolls down his neck as he continues trekking up the sunlit forest path. Suddenly, a soft, delicate hand reaches out and tenderly wipes the sweat from his cheek. Feeling her gentle touch, he freezes slightly in place, caught completely off guard by her gesture. Blushing softly, she pulls her hand back and clutches her chest, offering him a sweet, shy look of gratitude. Together with the village guide leading the way, he carries his new family step by step up toward their new mountain home. Arriving at the secluded wooden hut, he bows respectfully to the elder to thank him for guiding them there. With his duty finished, the old elder turns around and quietly makes his way back down the forest trail. Looking over the rustic cabin, he realizes this will be their home and worries about how cold it will get inside. Hugging his arms tightly as he shivers, he curses his hatred for the freezing cold, remembering how much he suffered from it before. Pushing his worries aside, he reaches out and grips the iron handle to check inside the wooden cabin. Stepping through the doorway, his eyes widen in confusion as he takes in the empty interior. Standing in the middle of the room, his wife turns toward him with a completely heartbroken, tearful expression. Seeing tears stream down her face, he steps closer and asks in distress why she is crying. Unable to explain due to the language barrier, she turns around and runs past him out into the open forest. Turning to look inside, he notices the stripped wooden shelves and sparse interior of the abandoned cabin. Baffled by what he is looking at, he wonders why the house has been completely cleared out. Deep in the woods, she sobs uncontrollably, knowing the greedy villagers stole every single tool and piece of furniture while they were gone. Devastated by their plight, she despairs over how they will survive the freezing winter without tools to repair the cabin or defend against beasts. Following her footsteps into the sunlit clearing, our protagonist finally finds her sitting alone in the grass. Without saying a word, he sits down right next to her on the lawn, offering his quiet presence. Reaching out with a tender smile, he gently places his large, warm hand on top of her head to comfort her. As his large, warm hand strokes her hair, tears continue to pool in her eyes from the sheer tenderness of the moment. Reassuring her softly not to worry, she stares at him in wonder, questioning if he is really comforting her. Looking up at the man she is meant to spend the rest of her life with, a gentle blush warms her cheeks. She wonders how they will manage when they can't speak the same language and he doesn't even know how to hunt yet. As his hand tenderly cradles her cheek, she worries whether they can truly survive together in such an unforgiving place. Looking down at her with a gentle, confident smile, our MC promises from the bottom of his heart to protect her. Even though anxiety and doubt still linger in her heart, his gentle touch offers an overwhelming sense of security. Bathed in the warm sunlight, the two of them share a quiet, intimate moment surrounded by the peaceful forest. Like a single raindrop creating soft ripples in water, an unexpected feeling of relief slowly washes over her soul. Looking down at her, our MC remembers how he lived completely alone in his old world ever since his parents passed away. He survived through endless struggles on his own back then, building the resilience he possesses today. Patting her back gently, he vows that now that he finally has a family, there is no obstacle he cannot overcome. Tapping his chest confidently, he promises to do whatever it takes to provide for them and keep them safe. Overcome by emotions she held back for so long, she finally breaks down, weeping uncontrollably against his chest. Burying her head into his chest, she lets all her built-up pain and sorrow pour out in heavy sobs. Seeing her mother crying in his arms, the little girl mistakenly thinks she is in danger and runs over shouting frantically. Wrapping her tiny arms around her mother, the brave child shouts at him not to hurt her precious mother. Under the glowing afternoon sky, the protagonist holds both of them close as they weep out their years of pain. Holding his crying bride in his arms, our MC processes the weight of this newly formed bond. Looking at the small child sniffling beside her, he admits to himself that this entire situation is completely new to him. Questions begin racing through his mind, wondering whose child this is, and why this kind woman gave him bread earlier. He wonders what deep trauma caused her to shed so many tears, though he knows answers will come with time. He believes that if he works hard and cares for them every day, they will eventually become a true, loving family. Holding both of them securely in his arms, he silently vows never to let either of them cry from sorrow again. Swearing to be a good husband and father, he promises to make sure they never regret having him in their lives. Later that evening, the scene shifts back to their small wooden cabin nestled deep within the forest. Inside the dim room, an intensely awkward silence settles over the three of them as they sit across from one another. Sitting awkwardly on the floor, our MC sighs internally, feeling like they've gone right back to square one after that emotional moment. Taking comfort in the fact that she seems awkward rather than terrified, he ponders what step he should take first. A light bulb suddenly goes off in his head as an obvious starting point comes to mind. Scooting closer across the wooden floor, he startles both of them with his sudden movement. Pointing to his own chest with a friendly smile, he clearly introduces his name as Kim Jo-won. Speaking slowly and distinctly, he explains through gestures that housemates should at least know each other's names. The woman blinks in surprise, slowly catching on to what he is trying to communicate to them. Extending an open palm toward her, he asks her to share her name with him in return. Hesitating for a moment, her lips open softly as she mumbles out the name Lizzie. Brightening up instantly, our MC repeats her name out loud to confirm he heard her correctly. Complimenting her that Lizzie is a beautiful name, he smiles warmly while she looks back at him softly. Turning his attention toward the little blonde child, he gently gestures to ask for her name as well. Looking up at her mother in confusion, the room suddenly grows quiet, making our MC wonder why the mood instantly shifted. Shaking her little head side to side, it becomes clear that the child has never been given a name. Seeing the child look down so gloomily, our MC gasps in surprise at such heartless neglect. Gently stroking her soft hair, he decides right then and there that he will give her a proper name. Kneeling down to her eye level, he softly bestows upon her the name Dorothy. Just like the brave girl from The Wizard of Oz, he hopes she will go on wonderful adventures with great friends. He prays that she will spread her wings like a dove and find her own true happiness in this world. Surrounded by warmth and affection, he knows in his heart that she is going to grow into a lovely child. Repeating the name Dorothy back to him, she looks up with big, curious eyes as he smiles approvingly. A beautiful smile lights up her entire face as she whispers her new name with pure happiness. Back near the cabin, our MC rolls up his sleeves and vigorously chops firewood with an axe. Peeking from behind a nearby tree, Lizzie watches him work, thinking to herself what a strange man he is. Though his body is far larger and stronger than her late abusive husband's, he chooses kindness over violence. Blushing softly, she admits that he feels like a completely different caliber of human compared to anyone she's ever known. Softly practicing his name, she marvels at how gentle his voice sounds despite speaking a language she cannot comprehend. Reflecting on her painful past, she realizes she has never experienced genuine warmth or gentle treatment in her entire life. Looking at his gentle, glowing smile, she wonders with deep emotion why he is being so incredibly nice to her. Pausing his work, he looks toward her, prompting her to think that a man like him clearly doesn't belong in a place like this. Spotting her hiding behind the tree, our MC raises a large hand and cheerfully waves at her while calling out her name. Gazing at his dark features, she notices his striking black hair and deep, mysterious black eyes. She recalls widespread rumors about an enemy nation performing a grand ritual to summon a legendary hero from another world. According to those ancient tales, the legendary hero was said to possess distinct black hair and matching black eyes. Watching him stride casually toward her through the sunlit forest, she tries to reconcile the legends with reality. While his physical appearance matches the rumored description of the hero, she still finds the thought hard to believe. She dismisses the thought, believing a grand hero belongs in a palace rather than working as a humble mountain keeper. Reminding herself that stories of summoned heroes are likely just fairy tales, she stands quietly as he comes to a stop before her. Leaning down gently to match her height, he offers her a soft, handsome smile that catches her completely off guard. Examining his features up close, she notices his hair has a warm brownish tint in the sunlight rather than pure black. Sighing in relief, she concludes he is simply a remarkably large man until a sudden realization stops her in her tracks. Clutching her chest, she questions why on earth she feels so relieved when they literally just met earlier today. Overwhelmed by sudden embarrassment, she turns away fidgeting, leaving our MC scratching his head in complete confusion. Reaching out once more, he softly rests his large hand atop her head, startling her with his familiar touch. Feeling the gentle warmth of his hand, she admits to herself that she simply can't get used to this kind of tenderness. In her traumatic past, a man's hand on her head only ever meant one thing: incoming strikes and harsh abuse. But right now, his hand carries no malice whatsoever, only stroking her hair with gentle, soothing affection. Closing her eyes as tears brim, she inwardly confesses how comforting it feels, secretly craving even more of his warmth. Standing amidst the golden leaves, she closes her eyes and silently wishes that he would hold her like this forever. Gazing down at her sweet face, a deep blush spreads across our MC's cheeks as his heart beats faster. Looking up at him with a soft, trusting gaze, her lips part slightly in the gentle breeze. Unable to resist the romance of the moment, he leans down and tenderly presses his lips against hers under the golden canopy. Her eyes widen in pure shock as the gentle touch turns in their very first romantic kiss in the quiet forest. Right after the surprise kiss, her mind goes completely blank as her face turns beet red. Realizing what he just did, our MC pulls back in panic while Lizzie freezes completely like a block of ice. Flustered beyond belief, his face burns hot as he stammers awkwardly, trying to find the words to explain. In a desperate attempt to escape the overwhelming embarrassment, he suddenly grabs a wooden water bucket lying nearby. Without saying another word, he sprints full speed into the forest, leaving Lizzie standing there in utter shock. Left all alone, steam practically erupts from her head as the full weight of what just happened sinks in. Walking dejectedly down the forest path, our MC scolds himself for being such an idiot and ruining the mood. Gripping his head in frustration, he regrets rushing things, knowing they literally just met for the first time today. Unable to even talk things through due to the language barrier, he wonders if he should just pretend nothing happened. He suddenly freezes mid-step as he notices the eerie, darkening surroundings around him. Looking around at the dense, foggy trees, he realizes in horror that he has walked far off the path and gotten completely lost. A chilling, ominous wind whistles through the dark canopy, signaling that something dangerous is lurking in the shadows. Deciding it's best to grab some water and head back immediately, he turns around, only to feel a sudden chill down his spine. Goosebumps break out across his skin as an intense, bloodthirsty aura locks onto him from behind. Emerging from the gloom is a massive, dire wolf, its glowing red eyes glaring hunger straight at him. The monstrous beast lets out a menacing growl, causing our MC to sweat heavily as survival instincts kick in. Staring down the giant predator, he gasps in shock at the sheer size of the wild wolf blocking his path. Dropping his water bucket to the ground, he lowers his posture and prepares to fight for his life. He tightly grips a sturdy wooden branch, utilizing the only makeshift weapon within arm's reach. With a ferocious roar, the giant beast leaps forward at full speed, aiming straight for his throat. Quick on his feet, he thrusts the wooden stick sideways in the beast's gaping maw, barely blocking its lethal fangs. Roaring with pure adrenaline, our MC draws back his fist to deliver a brutal counterattack. Throwing a punch with incredible force, he smashes his fist directly into the wolf's snout, making it howl in rage. The monster snaps its jaw again, crushing the thick stick to splinters as our MC curses under his breath. Refusing to back down, he wrestles the giant creature head-on, screaming that he won't die in a place like this. Pushing past his physical limits, intense aura flares up around him as he screams that he refuses to die. The wolf thrashes frantically, trying to crush him under its raw weight and razor-sharp claws. Screaming in agony, a burning sensation surges through his veins, feeling as though his entire body is engulfed in flames. Suddenly, a fiery spark ignites right before his eyes, catching both him and the beast by complete surprise. Bright orange flames erupt from his fist, engulfing the monster's snout in a sudden inferno. Staring at his blazing fist in disbelief, he realizes that the intense fire isn't burning his own hand at all. Seizing the opportunity, he leaps onto the beast's back, pinning the thrashing monster to the ground. He rains down fire-coated blows onto the creature's head, unleashing brutal strength enhanced by flame. Impact after impact explodes upon the monster until its ferocious roars fade into quiet whimpers. The massive dire wolf lies completely defeated on the grass, smoke rising softly from its charred fur. Collapsing on his back in the grass, our MC catches his breath, wondering how on earth his arm caught fire. Examining his arm up close, he is stunned to find no burn marks or scorch holes on his clothes whatsoever. A mind-blowing realization hits him as he wonders if he just accidentally manifested magical powers. He recalls the blood contract ritual performed earlier, connecting the dots to classic fantasy tropes. Realizing that receiving cheat abilities upon entering a fantasy world is a textbook novel trope, a grin forms on his face. Staring up at his open palm, our MC decides to test if he can intentionally trigger his magic again. Reaching his arm toward the sky, he shouts out Fireball with absolute conviction, expecting magic to erupt. He repeatedly screams Fireball at the empty sky, but absolutely nothing happens, leaving him sitting in awkward silence. Refusing to give up, he tries shouting other classic fire spells like Firestorm and Firewall with equal enthusiasm. He blabbers out every magical incantation he can think of, from Dragon Breath to invoking elemental spirits, but still gets zero results. Cringing at his own embarrassing behavior, he reminds himself that the fire was real, as even his battle wounds have slightly healed. Resting his head on his hands, he realizes that mastering this magic will allow him to hunt efficiently and provide for his family. He envisions a warm future where they enjoy delicious roast meat together in a comfortable, well-furnished home. Sitting up, he considers how invaluable healing magic will be for their health in these remote, doctorless mountains. Wiping off the sweat, he resolves to take things one step at a time, confident that if magic manifested once, it will happen again. His thoughts drift back to his past in Korea, remembering how his grandfather passed away shortly after his parents died. After taking young Jo-won, his grandfather died in a tragic accident, causing his angry relatives to blame him violently. The furious relatives screamed that everyone who lived with him died, knocking him to the floor at the very funeral. Traumatized and alone as a middle schooler, his own relatives looked down at him with pure hatred and resentment. They treated him like a walking curse that brought death wherever he went, a painful wound that never quite healed. Returning to the task at hand, he grabs the heavy wolf carcass, knowing he must move it quickly to avoid attracting predators. Hoisting the massive beast over his shoulders, he heads back toward the cabin, planning to skin the fur for warmth. Smiling softly, he remembers watching his late grandfather butcher animals on their farm, grateful that those memories now prove useful. Walking under the moonlit sky, he knows in his heart that his grandfather would be proud to see how strong he has become. Still, as he treks back, he ponders how on earth he is supposed to consistently train and control his newly awakened magic. Meanwhile, inside the warm, firelit cabin, Lizzie and little Dorothy search through cupboards to organize their limited supplies. Little Dorothy excitedly runs over to her mother, proudly holding up a wooden bowl she managed to find. Lizzie praises her sweet daughter with a warm smile, gently patting her head to thank her for being such a great helper. Giggling happily under her mother's touch, the young girl radiates pure joy in their cozy little home. Full of energy, Dorothy happily scampers back and forth across the room to help inspect the rest of the cabin. Curiously climbing up, she peeks her head out of a small window opening to check the dark forest outside. Tilting her head in confusion, she notices a massive silhouette approaching through the shadows. Suddenly, a monstrous wolf head pops up directly outside the window, causing the terrified child to scream at the top of her lungs. Hearing her daughter's blood-curdling scream, Lizzie turns sharply in pure panic and shouts out Dorothy's name. Instantly driven by motherly instinct, she grabs a sharp kitchen knife from the table, ready to protect her child at all costs. She bolts across the room toward the window, screaming at Dorothy to get back behind her. Cold sweat pours down her face as she bursts open the front door, expecting the worst. Outside, our MC is simply struggling to haul the massive dead wolf carcass onto the porch, catching her completely off guard. Still processing the scene, she rushes out with her knife raised, yelling out in sheer panic. MC drops the heavy monster to the grass with a thud, turning to look at her in surprise as she screams his name. As both Lizzie and Dorothy run toward him in tears, our MC blinks in utter confusion, wondering why they are both hysterical. Reaching his side, Lizzie suddenly freezes in place, realizing that he isn't being eaten at all. Overwhelmed by relief, her grip loosens and the kitchen knife clatters harmlessly onto the grass. Bursting into tears, she wraps her arms around his neck, while he flusteredly stammers that he is completely unharmed. Little Dorothy clings tightly to his leg, sniffling softly as tears soak into his trousers, relieved that her new father is safe. Holding her hands gently, MC assures Lizzie that the wolf bite on his arm was minor and he is completely okay. Under the bright full moon, he sits beside the slain monster, comforting both mother and daughter until they stop crying. Suddenly, Lizzie throws her arms around his neck, pulling him into a tight hug while whispering how glad she is that he survived. As she clings to him, weeping tears of relief, our MC correctly guesses from her tone that she's repeating how relieved she feels. Dorothy also buries her cute face against his leg, whimpering softly in a clear display of childish worry and affection. Enfolding both of them in his arms outside the glowing doorway, he gently scolds himself for breaking his promise not to make them cry. The next morning, a crow perches on the cabin roof as clear sunlight breaks over the peaceful mountain canopy. Early in the day, our MC works hard in the shed, carefully butchering and skinning the massive wolf pelt. Slicing through the tough hide with a sharp blade, he meticulously separates the fur pelt from the raw meat. Tossing the pelt aside, he wipes his brow, realizing butchering a huge wild beast is far tougher than his grandfather made it look. Looking over the large slabs of raw meat, he mentally notes that he needs to refine his butchering technique for next time. Slicing the meat into clean portion cuts, he prepares to wrap up the butchering process for the day. Footsteps echo near the entrance as Lizzie's silhouette appears in the sunlit doorway, calling out his name. Turning his head with a pleasant surprise, our MC greets her warmly as she enters the shed. Stepping outside the shed to meet her, he notices she is carrying a heavy wooden water bucket in her hands. Setting the bucket on the grass, she gestures for him to place the newly butchered meat inside. Pointing down at the bucket, she clearly communicates through cue hand gestures that it's meant for storing the raw meat. Blinking in sudden understanding, our MC realizes she brought the container specifically to help carry the meat. Stroking his chin thoughtfully, he tries to recall the local word for thank you that he heard yesterday. He stammers out an awkward attempt at the local phrase, pointing a finger as Lizzie blinks in surprise. Hearing his adorable, clunky pronunciation, a soft giggle escapes her lips as her face lights up with amusement. Feeling a bit embarrassed, our MC wonders if he botched the words, while Lizzie turns away to cover her chuckles. Smiling warmly up at him, she points her finger and gently teaches him the proper way to pronounce the phrase. Taking a gentle step forward, he closes the distance between them as the morning sunlight filters through the leaves. Looking directly into her eyes, he speaks the word of thanks with genuine, heartfelt gratitude. Caught off guard by his sincere gaze, her heart skips a beat as she softly responds in her own language. Listening to his gratitude, she reflects somberly that no member of her own family had ever once thanked her. For simply bringing a water bucket, he treated her with respect, making her realize how many new, wonderful firsts he brings into her life. Her thoughts wander back to yesterday's sunlit forest and the thrilling memory of their tender first kiss. Blushing bright red all over again, steam practically radiates from her cheeks as her heart races wildly. Following him back toward the cabin, she feels flustered, yet an inquisitive thought quietly enters her mind. Wondering if she was his first kiss, or if other women felt this exact same fluttering feeling toward him before, a slight pang touches her heart. To her own surprise, the thought of him with someone else brings a strange, aching jealousy that makes her eyes sting with tears. Back inside the rustic cabin, our MC sets down the heavy wooden container and bends over to carefully pack the fresh meat cuts. Stepping up to the wooden table, she finds it strange that a man would handle domestic kitchen work so naturally without complaint. Reaching out to grab a portion of meat, she helps him store the food, admiring how considerate he is in every small action. Suddenly, their hands brush against each other over the bucket, causing both of them to freeze instantly in place. As MC leans in closer to inspect her reaction, her heart leaps into her throat, wildly wondering what he is about to do. Expecting another passionate kiss, she instinctively squeezes her eyes shut, her face burning hot with anticipation. Instead of her lips, he leans down with utmost tenderness and places a soft, gentle kiss right on her forehead. As his lips touch her forehead, Lizzie opens her eyes, caught completely off guard by the unexpected gesture. Stepping back in embarrassment, she berates herself for reflexively closing her eyes like an idiot. Carrying the bucket of meat, our MC looks on in silence while she turns her red, embarrassed face away. Flailing her arms in chibi panic, she internally freaks out, terrified that she looked eager for a kiss on the lips. Before she can spiral any further, MC sets the bucket down and steps directly back in front of her. Determined not to let him misunderstand her feelings, she stares straight into his eyes without flinching. Leaning down, he presses a sweet, tender kiss directly onto her lips, leaving her wide-eyed in astonishment. Pulling back gently, he gives her a warm, affectionate smile as she gazes up at him in dazed wonder. Turning around to continue his work, MC suddenly spots little Dorothy standing at the entrance watching them. Peeking out from behind the doorframe, Dorothy stares with big golden eyes, having witnessed the entire kiss. Mortified that her daughter caught them, Lizzie bolts out the door at full speed, leaving a trail of dust behind. Walking briskly ahead to hide her burning face, she leads the way down the forest trail while MC and Dorothy follow closely behind. Little Dorothy walks alongside MC, adorably trying her best to help support the heavy bucket of meat. Looking down at his enthusiastic little helper, MC smiles warmly and offers her a cheerful thank you. Seeing Dorothy suddenly pout in disappointment, MC quickly realizes he forgot to address her by her new name. Lowering the bucket, he corrects himself and warmly thanks Dorothy by her name, making her eyes light up. Hearing him say her name, the little girl beams with absolute joy, nodding her head enthusiastically. Later back inside the cabin, Lizzie sits on the wooden floor, gently stroking the thick wolf pelt with a fond expression. Sitting across the room, MC watches her, wondering why she is drying the raw pelt inside despite the strong odor. Suddenly, a sudden realization dawns upon him as he remembers her past hardships. He realizes that after having all their possessions stolen, this warm wolf hide is an incredibly precious gift for her. Dorothy eagerly sits down beside her mother, curiously reaching out her small hands to feel the fluffy fur. Marveling at how soft the thick fur feels, the little girl lets out a soft gasp of pure wonder. Seeing the two of them giggling joyfully together, a sense of warmth fills the entire room. Watching his new family smile from the bottom of their hearts, our MC feels deeply satisfied and content. Lizzie turns her attention to the butchered meat, carefully arranging the choice cuts inside wooden preservation bowls. Observing her traditional curing technique, he pays close attention so he can handle the process himself next time. Noticing her joy upon finding the preserved animal fat, he feels glad he made sure not to throw it away. Looking at them, he mentally acknowledges how much knowledge and survival skills he still needs to master. He resolves to quickly learn how trade and commerce work in this world so he can build a prosperous life for them. Dusting off his trousers, he stands up, deciding that it's time to get back to work rather than idling around. As he turns to step outside, Lizzie suddenly leaps to her feet with a worried expression to stop him. Hurrying over with outstretched hands, she frantically gestures for him to sit back down and rest. Waving his hand dismissively, MC smiles and assures her that his injuries have healed and he feels fine. Placing a comforting hand on her shoulder, he promises not to overexert himself so she doesn't have to worry. Leaving her with a gentle smile, he turns around and heads out into the forest to begin his next task. Deep in the woods, he selects a large tree, considered the perfect target to practice his wood cutting and strength. Gripping the wooden axe handle tightly, he admits he lacks tree identification skills, but relies on his raw physical power. Raising the heavy axe high above his head, he channels his full body weight into a mighty downward strike. With tremendous force, the axe blade cuts through the air, heading straight for the solid timber. Out in the quiet woods, our MC finishes up a long day of gathering logs for the household. Wiping the sweat off his brow, he takes a quick moment to catch his breath after all that heavy lifting. Just past the tree stands his cozy wooden cabin, nestled peacefully near the mountain base. Carrying a basket full of freshly chopped firewood on his back, he opens the front door and steps inside. Seeing him return, both Lizzie and little Dorothy look up in surprise. Spotting the heavy load on his shoulders, Lizzie quickly rushes over to help him out. Catching her as she comes over, our MC drops down to sit on the floor to lighten the burden. Seeing her worried look, he reassures Lizzie that he is completely fine and not overworking himself. Blushing softly, Lizzie thanks him while little Dorothy watches the sweet moment between them. Feeling inspired to help out too, tiny Dorothy suddenly turns around and dashes away. She scurries straight to a bucket, dipping her cute little hands into the cool water. With wet hands, she comes running right back as fast as her tiny legs can carry her. Before he even realizes what is happening, Dorothy starts splashing and patting wet water all over his shirt. Completely caught off guard, our guy can only sit there bewildered while water drips down his neck. Lizzie cannot help but giggle at the adorable scene while MC gives a helpless, warm smile. Dorothy tilts her head up innocently, looking right into his eyes to see if she did a good job. MC gently pets her head, warmly thanking little Dorothy for trying to cool him down. Encouraged by his praise, Dorothy runs off to fetch more water, making MC laughingly yell that she can stop now. As Lizzie laughs beside him, MC realizes just how surreal and dreamy this whole peaceful family life feels. Just a few days ago, he never imagined he could experience true happiness like this, and he vows to keep both Lizzie and Dorothy smiling like this forever. As evening falls over the mountains, smoke gently rises from the cabin's stone chimney. Inside, MC and Lizzie enjoy a quiet dinner together while Dorothy drifts off to sleep right on the wooden floor. The two of them pause their meal to look down at the adorable little girl resting so peacefully. Clutching a tiny pencil in her hand, Dorothy sleeps soundly after a full day of playing around. Seeing how cute she looks, Lizzie and MC share a sweet, quiet chuckle over dinner. Wanting her to rest comfortably, our MC gently scoops up the sleeping girl in his arms. As he stands up holding Dorothy, Lizzie kneels down to pick up the dropped pencil from the floor. Carrying her carefully, MC walks across the warm room toward the bed right next to the crackling fireplace. He gently lays Dorothy down onto the soft mattress and tucks her in with a blanket. Meanwhile, Lizzie prepares a warm cloth over the hot stove to help clean up after the long day. Walking back into the kitchen area, MC finds Lizzie carefully wringing out the warm, steaming towel. But as he reaches near, Lizzie suddenly reaches out and grabs his hand to stop him. Looking up into his eyes with a gentle, slightly nervous gaze, she holds onto his wrist. Taken aback by her sudden approach, our guy gets flustered as his heart starts beating a little faster. Framed by the warm light of the cabin, the couple stands closely together in a silent, intimate moment. Lizzie steps even closer, raising the warm cloth gently toward his collar. She brings her hands up around his neck, determined to take care of her hardworking husband. Blushing intensely, Lizzie reminds herself that as his wife, she should not be shy about showing affection. Overcoming her embarrassment, she slips her hand inside his shirt to gently wipe the sweat off his chest. Completely frozen in shock, our MC can only stare down speechless as his cute wife wipes his chest under his shirt. Looking down on her flustered face, our MC gives Lizzie a gentle, tender smile. Overcome with embarrassment, Lizzie quickly pulls back and tries to hide her blushing face. Before she can retreat any further, MC reaches out and gently takes her hand in his. Pulling her slightly closer, he gazes warmly into her eyes as her heart begins to flutter. MC leans down close to her ear and softly whispers that it is time for them to head to sleep. Holding her hand tightly, he leads Lizzie away from the hearth and toward the sleeping area. Settling down together beside the soft glow of a lantern, the two lie side by side on the bed. Hovering gently over her, MC looks down into her blushing face with deep affection. Lizzie gazes back up at her husband, her heart overflowing with love in the quiet room. Softening completely, she offers him a beautiful, serene smile in the dim light. Leaning down slowly, our MC gives his wife a soft, tender kiss. As he holds her close, MC marvels at how soft she feels, deeply grateful to truly have her as his wife. Looking over at sleeping Dorothy, he silently prays that his new family will never have to leave his side. In his heart, he desperately vows to protect Lizzie and Dorothy, keeping them happy until his final breath. Shift back to Lizzie's past. Wealthy nobles in huge castles with dozens of servants might never understand the hardships of commoners. For poor families, every child grows up sharing the exact same small living and sleeping space as their parents. As a young girl growing up in a tiny house, Lizzie was forced to hear everything that happened between her parents at night. Back then, her nights were filled with dread due to her abusive father's furious shouting and violent outbursts. Terrified under her blanket, she spent countless nights listening to her father scream at her mother. Long after her father fell asleep, young Lizzie would lie awake listening to her mother weep until dawn. That overwhelming fear left a permanent mark on her childhood, making her constantly afraid of what lay ahead. She used to lie awake wondering if her mother's miserable, tear-filled life was doomed to become her own future. But back in the present, Lizzie's eyes gently open as the quiet sound of crackling firewood fills the room. Waking up to the cozy warmth of the hearth, she realizes the soothing noise of the fire woke her up. To her surprise, she finds herself tucked under the warm blanket next to her husband, having expected to wake up on the cold floor. Realizing MC carried her to bed, she blushes softly as she notices he even gave her his arm to use as a pillow. She smiles warmly as little Dorothy snuggles up comfortably right against her side under MC's arm. Filled with overwhelming relief, Lizzie realizes that marriage between a husband and wife does not have to be painful or terrifying. Resting her hand gently against MC's bare chest, she marvels at how much her world has changed since meeting him. Suddenly, MC stirs awake with a soft groan, catching Lizzie completely by surprise. Still half asleep, our MC stretches out and pulls both Lizzie and Dorothy tighter into his arms. Buried against his warm chest, Lizzie feels her heart beating so fast she thinks it might explode. A sweet, tingling warmth washes over her as a helpless smile spreads across her face. As bright morning light streams through the cabin window, Lizzie silently wishes this peaceful moment could last forever. A short while later, MC groggily wakes up to find Dorothy still asleep beside him while Lizzie has already gotten up. Throwing back the blanket, MC sits up and looks around the quiet room to find his wife. Before stepping out of bed, he affectionately pets Dorothy's hair to keep her sleeping soundly. Over by the kitchen area, Lizzie walks in carrying a heavy bucket filled with water. But before she can lift it any further, MC's strong hand suddenly reaches out and grabs the handle. Effortlessly taking the heavy load off her hands, our MC gives her a gentle smile as Lizzie looks up in surprise. MC empties the heavy bucket of water into the tub for his wife. Turning around, MC speaks softly to Lizzie. Surprised by his address, Lizzie stammers in confusion. Asking if she slept well while calling her honey, MC notices her face turning bright red. As Lizzie nods timidly with a deep blush, MC wonders if calling her honey caused her reaction. Realizing that affectionate terms of endearment embarrass her, MC smiles warmly to himself. Setting the bucket down, MC asks Lizzie what title she would prefer to use for him. Blushing deeply, Lizzie softly requests that he continue calling her honey. Playfully teasing her, MC immediately repeats the nickname, causing Lizzie to cover her face in adorable embarrassment. Unable to handle the overwhelming embarrassment, Lizzie turns her back to him. Watching her cute reaction, MC finds himself wanting to tease his shy wife even more. Poking her gently in the back, MC playfully tells her to turn around and look at him. Right at that moment, little Dorothy wakes up stretching under the blanket. Still half asleep, the little girl drools as she dreams about a delicious piece of flying meat. Eager to eat, Dorothy clumsily tumbles out of bed and crawls across the wooden floor. She dashes straight across the room toward her parents with her arms stretched wide open. But to MC and Lizzie's complete surprise, Dorothy zooms right past them without stopping. She runs straight to the storage barrel, her eyes sparkling at the sight of fresh meat inside. MC and Lizzie share a warm laugh as tiny Dorothy leans half upside down inside the barrel to reach a piece. Laughing out loud, MC mimics her energetic chant for meat as Dorothy looks up at him. Determined to get her breakfast, Dorothy kicks her feet excitedly while chanting for meat inside the barrel. Seeing how much his family loves meat, MC grins brightly, deciding it is time to get serious about hunting. Heading into the lush forest with his axe, MC feels completely confident and ready to face any wild beast. Gripping his trusty axe firmly, he feels fully prepared now that he has a proper weapon in hand. He treks deeper into the wilderness, his heavy footsteps rustling through the thick grass. Suddenly, the bright woods turn dark as an ominous purple haze creeps into the air. Sensing a heavy pressure surrounding him, MC pauses and looks around cautiously. The crushing aura in the air becomes so intense that he can barely breathe despite being outdoors. Stealing his grip on the axe handle, MC readies himself for whatever monstrous creature is approaching. From behind the trees, a mysterious cloaked figure slowly steps into the clearing toward him. Expecting a terrifying beast, MC is surprised to see a human walking out from the woods instead. A stern old traveler clad in a dark cloak steps closer through the dim forest shadows. Lowering his hood slightly, the old man fixes his sharp, experienced gaze directly on our protagonist. Keeping his guard up, MC carefully evaluates the strange old man who suddenly crossed his path. Flashback reveals that the old man had previously investigated a blood-stained battle site deep in the woods. Examining the massive claw marks and blood, the old traveler realized a giant beast was slain here by a single person. Having secretly surveilled the cabin for days, he knew MC seemed like a simple woodcutter who could barely swing an axe. He found it completely unbelievable that an ordinary guy who knew nothing about hunting could defeat a monster alone. Shaking his head, the old man knew even a seasoned hunter would struggle to defeat such a monster unarmed. Driven by curiosity about this mysterious woodcutter, the veteran hunter decided to confront MC directly. Wanting to verify his suspicions, the old hunter decides to inspect the woodcutter up close. Stepping forward through the misty trees, the old hunter directly confronts our protagonist. Spotting the scars on MC's arm, the old hunter immediately recognizes the nature of the wound. Examining the scar, he realizes it came from a wolf bite, amazed that such a severe wound healed so cleanly. Knowing that such a deep bite should have paralyzed an ordinary man, he realizes only one explanation remains. Observing MC closely, the old hunter suspects that this woodcutter might secretly be a rare mage. Mages are legendary figures in this world, wielding incredible magical powers beyond normal human limits. Because mages are so rare, commoners rarely ever see one in their entire lifetime. Realizing what it would mean if MC truly is a hidden mage, the old hunter considers his own goals. A dark, sinister grin spreads across the old hunter's face as he sees a golden opportunity before him. Facing our protagonist, the old man realizes he finally has a chance at getting revenge before he dies. Sensing the sudden change in the old man's aura, MC wonders about the stranger's true background. Flashback reveals the old hunter's past, back when he was a vigorous young ranger managing the wilderness. As a forest ranger managing a noble's estate, he was obligated to serve in war to earn prestige and favor. Leaving his family behind as an independent hunter, he set out toward a mountain village to become a woodcutter. Settling into the village, he found the surrounding mountains rich with timber and valuable resources. However, because commoners could freely gather wood at the forest edge, competition was fierce. To find better timber, he had no choice but to venture deeper into the unexplored mountain territory. He thought exploring the deep mountains was a great way to learn the land, unaware of why locals avoided the area. To secure an official contract to manage the Lord's forest, a woodcutter was required to have all 4 limbs fully intact. But before securing the contract, the young hunter suffered a horrific injury that shattered his leg, disqualifying him. Weeping in pain and despair, he watched his dreams of glory vanish in a single tragic instant. It turns out that a vicious tribe of goblins inhabited the deep mountain woods. Cornered by the hideous creatures, the young woodcutter cowered in absolute terror as they closed in. These monster goblins survived by kidnapping human women from nearby settlements to breed their offspring. The goblins terrorized the region, driving away the women and destroying the village's future. As the village became known as a cursed goblin domain, the ruined woodcutter endured decades of misery, living solely for revenge. Robbed of his limbs and future, he harbored immense hatred for both the goblins and the cowed villagers. For decades he lived fueled by a single burning obsession to see every single goblin slaughtered. He swore to survive by any means necessary until he could burn the goblin's nest to ashes. Looking at the powerful woodcutter before him, the old hunter realizes this man possesses the strength to eradicate the goblins. With his massive frame and giant-like physical strength, MC is unlike anyone in the region. On top of his incredible strength, MC possesses an absurd level of rapid healing. The old hunter recognizes that MC has the potential to surpass any monster hunter he has ever encountered. Knowing the goblins lurking in the mountains will eventually raid the village again, time is running out. The old hunter decides he will train MC into a master monster slayer before the goblins strike. Hiding his true motives, the old man plans to trick MC into an official binding contract so he cannot back out. Unaware of the scheme, MC bows respectfully to the veteran ranger, thanking him for offering to teach him. Observing MC's bow, the old hunter notices MC maintains a perfect combat stance, keeping his guard up even while acting polite. Smiling warmly on the surface, the old hunter offers his hand, promising to teach MC everything he knows about hunting. MC is caught off guard when the old hunter compliments his potential as a hunter. The next morning, MC wakes up feeling like he barely slept, finding Lizzie already cooking breakfast at the hearth. Hearing footsteps outside the cabin, MC looks toward the window to check who arrived. Seeing the old hunter approaching the door, MC worries about strangers entering his home while he is away. Looking at Lizzie and Dorothy by the stove, he decides not to let strangers get used to coming inside. MC steps out to meet the old hunter at the entrance before he can step through the door. Spotting the old man's overly polite smile, MC feels a subtle sense of suspicion. The old man's smile reminds MC of a corporate HR manager making empty promises during salary negotiations. Regardless of the old man's motives, MC puts his bag on, ready to learn whatever hunting skills he can. As he prepares to leave, Lizzie hurriedly rushes over holding a freshly packed lunch for him. Watching his shy wife clumsily pack his meal while wiping her brow, MC finds her effort heart-melting. Looking at Lizzie's flustered face, he thinks to himself how adorable she is when taking care of him. Little Dorothy observes her mother thoughtfully while Lizzie catches her breath after cooking. Suddenly, the little girl dashes forward with a surprisingly serious look on her face. To MC's shock, tiny Dorothy spreads her arms wide and dramatically blocks the doorway. Seeing Lizzie step up, MC realizes Dorothy blocked his path so his wife could give him his forgotten lunchbox. Lizzie gently places the meal into his bag, reminding him to make sure he eats properly while working. Feeling a wave of gratitude, MC smiles warmly, reflecting on how wonderful it feels to have a caring family. As he walks out, Lizzie calls out her well wishes, which MC easily understands despite the language barrier. Turning back with a smile, MC repeats her phrase to let her know he appreciates her words. Lizzie nods with a bright, happy smile as he promises to return home as soon as possible. Turning around, Lizzie prompts little Dorothy to send her father off properly as well. Brightening up, little Dorothy runs over and shouts a cheerful goodbye to him. MC waves back happily, promising the sweet little girl that he will be back home soon. Walking away with the old hunter, MC finds it hard to leave home when his family is waiting for him. Seeing his cute wife and daughter waving goodbye makes him wish he could stay home all day. As they trek deep into the sunlit woods, MC wonders how long they have been walking. Growing slightly impatient, he wonders what important lesson the old hunter is leading him to. Suddenly, the old hunter comes to a halt and instructs MC to watch his movements closely. Pointing toward his boots, the old man prompts MC to pay close attention to his feet. The veteran hunter begins walking forward with a deliberate, unusually heavy stride. MC notices that despite his frail appearance, each step the old man takes leaves a deep imprint in the ground. Shocked by this discovery, MC realizes the old hunter is demonstrating a specialized physical technique. Examining the trail, MC notices the unusual depth and weight behind every single footprint left behind. Recognizing the concept from martial arts lore, MC wonders if this is an advanced weight-shifting footwork technique. Determined to master the skill, MC focuses intently on copying the old man's exact movements. Raising his boot, MC stomps down hard, attempting to replicate the heavy, grounded step. He focuses all his attention on matching his mentor's stance and weight distribution with every step. Glancing back over his shoulder, the old hunter smirks, impressed by how quickly MC catches on. As they venture deeper, the veteran hunter officially begins passing down all his knowledge of mountain survival and hunting. The old hunter has MC touch the trees, explaining that every mountain features its own unique plant species. To teach him the terrain, the mentor makes MC trace the contours of the ground with his bare hands. Taking a quick break atop a rocky ledge, MC listens attentively to the veteran hunter's lessons. Reaching down to his belt, the old hunter opens his leather waist pouch. He pulls out a small wooden pipe, signaling that it is time for a short rest. Placing the pipe in his mouth, the old man gestures toward MC, giving him permission to eat his lunch. Thrilled, MC quickly unrolls his bag to enjoy the delicious meal Lizzie lovingly prepared for him. Sitting on a rock, MC eagerly lifts the metal lid of the lunchbox. As the delicious aroma wafts out, the old hunter sharply warns him not to open cooked food in the woods. Startled, MC stops mid-bite as his mentor points sternly at him to put the lid back on. The veteran hunter shakes his head and gestures toward the wide forest expanse ahead. Realizing his mistake, MC understands that the scent of cooked food easily alerts wild animals and predators. Saddened, MC closes the lid, realizing that bringing home cooked hot meals into the woods is a risk he cannot take. He feels like crying at the thought of not being able to enjoy Lizzie's carefully packed lunch on future hunts. Later, they arrive at a small wooden cabin deep in the forest where the old hunter stays. Stepping inside, the old hunter returns carrying two massive wooden bows, though MC notices their unusual shape. Recalling standard archery, MC notes that normal bows are typically curved like a C or a D. Examining the nearly straight wooden limbs, he wonders how anyone could possibly draw such a stiff weapon. Handing the heavy bow to MC, the old hunter orders him to take the weapon and follow him outside. Walking behind his instructor, MC remains skeptical that a human can even pull such a massive bowstring. As the old hunter takes his archer stance, MC realizes drawing this longbow requires pure, superhuman strength. With practiced ease, the veteran hunter raises the giant bow overhead and draws the heavy string back full length. MC is amazed by his mentor's rock-solid stability, holding the fully drawn bow without a single tremor. Releasing the string, the arrow cuts through the air like a bolt of lightning. The arrow buries itself deep into a massive tree trunk with overwhelming force, sending wood splinters flying. Speechless at the terrifying power behind the shot, MC gains a whole new respect for proper archery. Determined to master the weapon, MC adopts the proper stance and draws his own giant bowstring. The veteran hunter steps up beside him, carefully adjusting MC's arms and shoulders to refine his technique. Surprised by MC's raw physical power, the old hunter marvels at how effortlessly MC holds the heavy bow without flinching. Focusing all his concentration, MC steadies his breath and aims directly at his target. Reflecting on all the lessons from today, MC reviews every movement and instruction in his mind. He vows to push himself to the absolute limit so he can become an independent hunter capable of protecting his family. Above all else, his driving motivation is to become a strong man who can properly provide for Lizzie and Dorothy. Meanwhile, back at the cabin, little Dorothy happily sings a sweet little song while lying in bed. She rolls around playfully on the bed, adding cute rhymes about her new father and her favorite food. Rubbing her tiny stuffed stomach, she happily complains that she ate so much meat her belly feels completely full. Hearing giggling nearby, Dorothy turns her head to see Lizzie kneeling by the cupboard with a bright blush. Dorothy notes that Lizzie laughs all the time now, remembering how dark and quiet their lives were before MC arrived. Watching her mother smile while folding clothes, little Dorothy feels a cozy warmth fill her heart. Eager for her belly to clear room for her next meal, Dorothy suddenly wonders who this man named Joan really is. Pondering her family relationships, Dorothy wonders what MC truly is to her if he is Lizzie's husband. Knowing MC and Lizzie are not her biological parents, Dorothy fears they might abandon her just like her real father did. She worries that because MC is Lizzie's husband, he will only keep Lizzie and leave Dorothy behind. Tears fill her eyes as she desperately wonders what will happen to her if she gets left all alone. Snapping out of her bad dream, Dorothy wakes up alone in bed and looks around the quiet room. Noticing Lizzie is no longer in the cabin, Dorothy wonders where her mother went. Suddenly, harsh shouting echoes from outside, triggering terrifying memories of her past abuse. She remembers how her biological father used to scream at her, calling her useless child who wasted food. Panicking, Dorothy dashes across the cabin floor to protect their precious meat supply from being taken. Seeing that the meat is still safe inside the wooden barrel, she wonders again where Lizzie could be. Angry, aggressive shouting erupts right outside the cabin door, making Dorothy flinch in fear. Terrified by the harsh voices, the little girl gasps as her heart pounds rapidly. Creeping quietly toward the window, Dorothy reaches up to peek outside to see what is happening. Looking out, she recognizes the 3 aggressive villagers standing outside the cabin door. She remembers these men used to beat her father, causing him to take his anger out on her and her mother. Watching from hiding, Dorothy trembles in terror, fearing Lizzie will be beaten to death just like her mother was. Outside, the ruthless thug grabs Lizzie, falsely accusing her of stealing their village's meat. Lizzie bravely speaks up that her husband hunted the meat, but the thug mockingly dismisses her words. The second thug shouts that they did her a favor by finding her a new husband, accusing her of being an ungrateful thief. As the thugs push to search the cabin, tears stream down Lizzie's face while she desperately defends her husband. Enraged by her resistance, the brutal thug slaps Lizzie hard across the face, throwing her to the dirt. Shoving past her, the 3 thugs barge inside the cabin and spot the giant wolf pelt mounted on display. Eyeing the pristine fur, the lead thug reaches out in disbelief, recognizing it as a massive wolf pelt. Overjoyed by the discovery, the greedy thugs realize a pelt of this size and quality is worth a massive fortune. Ordering his men to tear the place apart, the lead thug demands they search every inch of the cabin for more loot. Hiding under the bed, little Dorothy shakes uncontrollably as the thugs' footsteps approach her hiding spot. Seeing the massive pelt, the thugs begin to suspect that someone in this house actually managed to hunt a high-level monster. Refusing to let them rob her home, Lizzie musters her courage and runs back inside the cabin. Standing boldly in front of the wolf pelt, Lizzie spreads her arms to block the thugs from taking it. With tears in her eyes, she bravely yells at the intruders that this pelt belongs to her family. Smirking contemptuously, the thug steps closer, mocking her for suddenly acting tough now that she has a new husband. Furious at her defiance, the thug violently grabs Lizzie by the neck, choking her as she gasps for air. Without a shred of mercy, he slams her down onto the hard floorboards with brutal force. Clutching her injured neck, Lizzie lies bruised and helpless on the ground, groaning in pain. Peeking out from under the bed, tiny Dorothy gasps in absolute horror as she witnesses her mother getting beaten. Bruised and helpless, Lizzie lies weeping on the floor while the thugs tower over her. Glancing toward the bed, Lizzie worries about her daughter's safety above all else. Terrified, Dorothy remembers how she used to hide away and pretend not to notice when her mother was beaten in the past. Overwhelmed with guilt, the little girl weeps silently, wondering if she should keep hiding or try to save her mother. Towering over the injured woman, the cruel thugs mock her, completely unconcerned about any potential consequences. The thugs mockingly discuss how MC cannot speak their language, assuming they can threaten Lizzie into remaining silent. The lead thug grabs Lizzie's arm, forcing her to her feet while planning to drag her into the forest. He commands his cronies to loot the cabin's valuables while he personally takes Lizzie away. Threatening her mercilessly, he warns that if she tells her husband, they will return at night to burn down her home. Laughing maliciously, the thugs exit the cabin, carrying the stolen wolf pelt and dragging Lizzie along. Cowering in her hiding spot, little Dorothy watches in terror as Lizzie is dragged away. Driven by panic and fear that Lizzie might never return, the little girl runs toward the cabin door. Reaching the doorway, Dorothy clutches her face, trying to stifle her desperate sobs. Unable to hold back her terror any longer, she bursts into loud, heartbreaking tears. Standing on a wooden crate outside, she cries out at the top of her lungs, begging Jowon to save them. Watching from afar, she sees the thugs dragging her helpless mother into the forest shadows. Meanwhile, deep in the woods, MC stretches his tired arms as he and the old hunter begin heading home. The old mentor points ahead, indicating that today's rigorous training session is officially over. Grateful for everything he learned, MC bows deeply and thanks the veteran hunter for his guidance. Suddenly, the faint sound of a child weeping echoes through the trees, making MC freeze as he recognizes Dorothy's voice. Knowing Dorothy is a tough little girl who never cries without reason, his heart instantly sinks. Panic takes over as he realizes something terrible must have happened back at the cabin. Dropping everything, our MC sprints through the woods at full speed, praying his family is safe. Emerging from the trees, MC is met with the horrific sight of 3 thugs dragging Lizzie and carrying his stolen pelt. A wave of pure, murderous rage consumes MC as he vows to slaughter anyone who dared harm his family. Hearing the thundering footsteps behind them, the thugs turn around, completely unaware of the danger approaching. Before the thug can react, MC closes the distance instantly and lands a devastating punch straight to his face. The brutal strike sends the thug flying through the air, crashing onto the dirt, completely knocked out cold. Seeing her husband arrive, Lizzie calls out his name with tears of relief while MC's expression turns deadly serious. Radiating pure malice, MC steps forward like an unstoppable predator while the remaining 2 thugs back away in terror. Paralyzed by fear, the second thug sweats profusely as he realizes they stand no chance against this monster of a man. Grabbing the second thug by the neck, MC drives a terrifying knee strike directly into his chest. Coughing up blood, the thug collapses onto the grass as the blonde leader stands frozen in pure shock. Driven into a corner, the blonde thug desperately swings his fist, trying to strike MC in a blind panic. Easily dodging the sloppy punch, MC dives beneath his guard and tackles the thug forcefully to the ground. Using his monstrous strength, MC lifts the heavy thug in the air and slams him down onto the hard dirt with bone-shattering force. The impact shakes the ground, pinning the arrogant leader helpless beneath MC's crushing weight. Mounting the defeated thug, MC cocks his massive fist, determined to teach these scum a lesson they will never forget. He rains down a brutal punch onto the man's face, knowing that mercy against scum like this only invites further tragedy. Radiating an overwhelming killing intent, MC vows to engrave utter terror into their minds so they never dare return. Even after the brutal beating, the stubborn thug tries to reach for his sickle on the ground behind him. Spotting the sneaky move, Lizzie desperately screams out his name to warn her husband. With a crazed look in his eyes, the thug leaps up from behind, swinging his sharp sickle down with murderous intent. Without even looking back, MC's hand snaps up like a steel trap, grabbing the thug's wrist firmly out of midair. Applying brutal force, MC twists the thug's arm backward, shattering his bone as the attacker screams in agonizing pain. MC's rage explodes as he looks down at the thug whose arm he just shattered. Just as MC is about to unleash even more violence, the old hunter steps in and shouts at him to stop. Holding MC's arm firmly, the old hunter forcefully commands him to calm down before he kills the man. Pointing toward the cabin, the old mentor reminds MC that his little daughter is watching everything in terror. Hearing the old hunter's shout, Lizzie turns toward her husband with a shocked and fearful expression. Over at the cabin doorway, tiny Dorothy weeps loudly, trembling in fear from all the brutal violence. Snapping out of his rage, MC's murderous aura vanishes as he turns around toward his terrified family. Seeing MC's terrifying anger for the first time, Lizzie is shocked to realize how frightening he can be. For a split second during the fight, MC's fierce violence reminded Lizzie of her late, abusive husband. Looking at the unconscious thugs on the ground, a momentary surge of fear made her worry if she might be beaten too. However, the moment she looks into MC's eyes, her fear dissolves, seeing only deep concern and remorse. She realizes his anger did not come from malice, but from a desperate desire to protect her. Seeing MC look at her so anxiously, Lizzie realizes he's afraid that she now fears him. MC tentatively takes a step closer, calling out her name with gentleness and concern. Lizzie wonders why her opinion matters so much to him and why he looks so worried about scaring her. Looking down at her trembling hands, she realizes her physical reaction is what made MC think she was terrified of him. Seeing the pain and regret in MC's eyes, Lizzie desperately wants to reassure her husband. Though she wants to tell him she is not afraid, the language barrier prevents her from explaining it in words. Overcoming her trembling, Lizzie slowly reaches her hand out toward him. Looking into his eyes, she calls out his name with warmth and affection to soothe his worries. The two of them step closer together on the dirt path, closing the emotional distance between them. MC gently takes her trembling hands in his own, offering her a soft, comforting smile. Holding his warm, bruised hands, Lizzie feels a deep sense of certainty and comfort wash over her. She smiles contentedly, realizing that as long as she is by MC's side, she will always be safe from harm. She tenderly presses her cheek against his palm, expressing her complete trust in him. Tears of pure happiness well in her eyes as she softly thanks him for coming to her rescue. Touched and surprised by her sweet gesture, MC stands frozen for a moment. Holding his hand close, she looks up at him with immense love and gratitude. Without hesitation, MC pulls his wife into a tight, warm embrace, holding her close to his heart. Gently patting her back, MC wonders why she is so deeply grateful to him. Embracing her softly, MC thinks to himself that he is the one who should be thanking her for coming into his life. Suddenly, a soft sob interrupts their peaceful moment, pulling their attention back to the cabin. Over at the cabin, little Dorothy stands on a crate, still weeping softly from the shock. Realizing Dorothy needs comfort, Lizzie gently pulls back from the embrace and points toward their daughter. Lizzie immediately dashes back toward the cabin to check on her weeping daughter, with MC right behind her. Rushing inside, Lizzie reaches out to comfort tiny Dorothy, who is trembling on the wooden box. Reaching her daughter, Lizzie notices Dorothy's strange, terrified reaction. Dorothy stands frozen, shaking uncontrollably as tears pool in her large, frightened eyes. Even though she called for MC's help, witnessing his terrifying, monstrous power in person traumatized the little girl. Seeing violence triggers horrific memories of her past, reminding her of the bruised, swollen faces of her abusive upbringing. Terrified that she might suffer the same terrible fate one day, little Dorothy tries her best to hold back her tears, knowing that crying only ever led to being beaten in the past. Terrified that Lizzie might end up ignoring her like a ghost the way her old stepmother used to, Dorothy knows she has to apologize immediately. Reaching out her tiny hands, she tearfully begs Lizzie forgiveness for hiding instead of helping, pleading with her not to leave her alone. Sobbing uncontrollably as tears stream down her face, the little girl blames herself for everything that happened. But instead of scolding her, Lizzie instantly kneels down and pulls Dorothy into a warm, comforting embrace, asking her what on earth she's talking about. Crying tears of relief, Lizzie gently explains that when she ignored her earlier, it was only to protect her so those dangerous men wouldn't discover where she was hiding. She reassures Dorothy that she has absolutely nothing to feel guilty about, leaving the little girl looking up in soft disbelief. Lizzie reminds her that everything is completely safe now because Papa is here, though Dorothy is confused since her biological father passed away long ago. Chuckling softly, Lizzie asks Dorothy if she truly knows who Joan is, and Dorothy innocently replies that he's Joan and Lizzie's husband. Smiling, Lizzie explains that because Joan is her husband, that makes him Dorothy's new father as well. She gently breaks down the logic, reminding Dorothy that since Lizzie is her stepmother, her husband naturally becomes her father. Hearing that, Dorothy's eyes widen in sheer shock as the realization suddenly hits her. Glancing out toward the woods where Joan is standing, she stares at him with a whole new perspective. Turning back to Lizzie just to be absolutely sure, Dorothy asks if that man out there really is her father, and Lizzie warmly confirms it. Stroking her hair softly, Lizzie explains that Joan isn't like her abusive old father, but someone strong who protects them, making Dorothy realize why he fought those scary men so fiercely. Recalling how brutally Joan took down those thugs, Dorothy realizes he did all of that to protect her simply because he is her papa. Overjoyed by this revelation, Dorothy instantly gets up and bolts toward the doorway while Lizzie watches on. Running out into the night air, the little girl opens her mouth and calls out to him with all her might. Looking at his tall frame from behind, Dorothy realizes that this giant man standing in the forest is truly her new father. She dashes across the grass toward him, thrilled that she finally has a super strong father to protect her and Lizzie. Remembering how gently he holds her at night instead of hurting her, she runs as fast as her small legs can carry her. She remembers his kind smile, how he fed her meat, and even gave her a proper name, feeling overwhelming happiness. Realizing that the person who gave her a name is actually her papa fills her heart with pure joy. Hearing someone call out for Papa behind him, Joan turns around in complete surprise. Seeing little Dorothy running toward him with a giant smile on her face, he freezes in astonishment. Dropping whatever hesitation he had, Joan opens his arms wide to receive her. He catches Dorothy in a huge warm hug under the night sky as she happily throws her tiny arms around his neck. As Joan holds her close, he realizes he doesn't fully know the strange words she's shouting, yet deep down, he intuitively understands their meaning. Carrying her safely in his arms, Joan wears a soft, affectionate smile as he holds his new daughter. But as he holds her, Joan suddenly pauses and sniffs the air, noticing a very unexpected smell. Looking down at his arm, he realizes that little Dorothy was so overwhelmed with excitement that she actually peed herself. Seeing her beaming so innocently, Joan can't even be mad and decides he needs to get her into clean clothes quickly before she catches a cold. Just then, Lizzie comes running out to join them in the courtyard. The three of them share a beautiful, joyful embrace, finally feeling like a real family together. But right in the middle of the heartwarming moment, Dorothy's eyes suddenly snap open as she remembers something crucial. Panicking about her priorities, the little girl immediately wriggles down and dashes off shouting about the meat. Lizzie calls out her name in surprise as Dorothy sprints right past the unconscious bandits scattered across the grass. Ignoring the defeated thugs on the ground entirely, the little girl runs as fast as she can straight toward her target. She drops to her knees in front of a wooden bucket packed with fresh, raw meat, determined to secure her feast. Using every bit of her tiny strength, Dorothy begins dragging the heavy bucket across the grass, refusing to let all that delicious meat go to waste. Determination written all over her face, little Dorothy pulls with all her tiny body weight to haul the heavy wooden bucket full of meat. Spotting her struggling, Joan and Lizzie come running toward her in a panic, shouting out her name. Turning into a cute little ball of rage and hunger, Dorothy grunts in frustration and pulls even harder. Watching the little girl pull something twice her size, Joan is left completely stunned by her sheer determination. Walking alongside her, Joan thinks to himself that her obsession with meat is genuinely terrifying, while Lizzie just laughs. Stepping in to help, Jo-won easily lifts up the entire wooden bucket, along with Dorothy in one effortless motion. Thrilled to suddenly be lifted into the air, Dorothy throws her arms up in total awe and yells out in joy. Seeing her eyes sparkle with adoration over a simple container of meat, Jo-won chuckles, realizing how easy it is to be her hero. Clapping her hands, Lizzie tells them to bring the meat inside where it's safe. Pointing toward the cabin door, she instructs Jo-won to bring Dorothy inside as well, as it's still dangerous out in the dark. Not needing to be told twice, Dorothy happily dashes inside shouting for meat, with Jo-won following closely behind. Setting the bucket down inside the cozy cabin, Jo-won lets out a long sigh of relief. Heading back outside alone, Jo-won approaches the groaning bandits who are still lying helpless on the grass. His expression turns cold and intimidating as he gazes down at the men who dared threaten his family. But before he can take lethal action, the mysterious hooded elder suddenly appears right beside him. Shaking his head, the old guardian warns Jo-won that he must not beat or kill anyone anymore, making Jo-won double check if he heard correctly. Gritting his teeth, Jo-won knows the elder is right, since getting arrested or enslaved over these thugs would ruin everything. Glancing back toward the cabin, he reminds himself that he isn't a lonely survivor anymore and has a family to think about. Looking down at the bandits one last time, Jo-won promises to remember their faces, vowing that a fate worse than death awaits them if they ever cross paths again. Tapping Jo-won on the chest, the mountain guardian points toward the house, prompting Jo-won to nod in understanding. Deciding not to leave empty-handed, Jo-won inspects a crate of tools left by the thugs, knowing essential supplies are crucial for mountain survival. Before heading back inside, Jo-won looks through the open door and feels a wave of warmth seeing Lizzie lovingly cradle Dorothy. Entering the cabin with a heavy crate and a pelt slung over his shoulder, a gentle smile washes over Jo-won's face. And kneeling down near the hearth, he begins sorting through the useful tools he salvaged from the bandits. Holding a sturdy hammer in his hand, Jo-won remembers his past heartbreaks and realizes that losing a family once was more than enough. A look of quiet determination settles over his face as he makes a silent vow to himself. Looking at Lizzie and Dorothy welcoming him back, Jo-won resolves that no matter what happens, he will protect these two with his life. Gently brushing Lizzie's cheek where a dark bruise remains, he wishes he had magic to heal her injury instantly. Smiling softly to reassure him, Lizzie cups Jo-won's cheeks with both hands and insists that she's totally fine. Teasingly squishing his face into a hilarious expression, Lizzie bursts out laughing at the silly look on his face. Swept up in the mood, Jo-won suddenly scoops Lizzie up into his arms, lifting her off the ground. Holding her close, Jo-won casually excuses his sudden action by claiming the wooden floor was far too cold for her to sit on. But as he holds her, Jo-won's eyes suddenly widen in absolute shock as he notices something unbelievable. Touching her own face in utter disbelief, Lizzie realizes that the painful bruise on her cheek has completely vanished. Holding her close, Jo-won stares at her in awe, realizing that his earlier magic training had actually produced results. Overjoyed by the discovery, Jo-won beams with pride, thrilled that he can finally cast healing magic. Meanwhile, Lizzie is left completely bewildered, looking at him with utter confusion. The scene then shifts to a bustling nearby village, where an elderly woman's angry shouting echoes across the morning air. Frustrated out of her mind, an old woman kicks at a noisy rooster while cursing out someone who keeps sticking his nose where it doesn't belong. Seeing her so worked up, a middle-aged villager asks if giving some simple fabric to the mountain guardian really bothers her that much. The village chief tries to calm the angry old woman, insisting they need the mountain guardian, but she fumes over losing the fabric she saved for 10 years. He explains that Jo-won clearly knows how to fight, warning that if more villagers get hurt or die, their harvest will be completely ruined. Calling her foolish for missing the bigger picture, the chief scoffs while the woman angrily demands to know what this grand plan even is. In reality, the chief secretly observed Jo-won yesterday, noticing beast bite wounds on his arm that were healing at an impossibly fast rate. Remembering what Gus told him, the chief realizes Jo-won isn't just an ordinary hunter, but an extremely rare healing mage. Stroking his chin thoughtfully, the chief knows he must handle this situation carefully, since even powerful nobles crave healers. Visualizing royal palaces, the chief realizes he could make an absolute fortune by selling Jo-won to the highest bidder among the aristocracy. A greedy grin spreads across his face as he imagines securing a luxurious life far beyond his meager status as a village chief. Walking through the village, he smugly notes that none of the uneducated commoners have realized Jo-won's true magical identity yet. But he worries that if rumors leak, a guild or rival noble might snatch Jo-won away before he can cash in himself. Knowing he can only trust old Gus, the chief plans to have Gus keep tabs on Jo-won while he secretly finds a noble buyer. Turning back to the woman, he instructs her to get on the good side of Jo-won's wife, noting how sharp and quick Jo-won is. Listening closely, the woman hears his warning that Jo-won is sharp enough to uncover their illegal embezzlement of the Lord's goods if they aren't careful. The chief adds that Jo-won adores his wife, so becoming her friend could help them score cheap rabbit pelts from him. Agreeing with the scheme, the woman turns to leave, acknowledging that building a relationship with another woman should be easy enough. To keep Jo-won suspecting nothing, the chief decides they should return some of the stolen supplies they took from his cabin earlier. Bending down to grab firewood, He acknowledges that Jo-won is on a completely different level than their previous victims and must be handled delicately. He tosses the sticks into the blazing hearth, finalizing his deceitful plan in the warm glow of the fire. Though it pains him to return valuable goods, the chief accepts that sacrifices are necessary to pull off a bigger scheme. Standing over the flames with a sinister smirk, he reminds himself that giving up a little flesh is worth securing the prize. A few days later, a peaceful morning settles over the mountains near Jo-won's wooden cabin. Getting dressed inside, Jo-won notices with a smile that Lizzie seems in high spirits again today. Sitting on the floor, Lizzie happily unpacks a fresh shipment of returned belongings and food supplies sent by the village chief that morning. Watching her glow with joy over simple ingredients, Jo-won finds it hilarious that she's happier about Flour than when her bruise vanished. Looking at her sweet smile, Jo-won feels a warm realization that true happiness is really found in the little things. Approaching his beloved wife, Jo-won feels immensely grateful to have such a pure and wonderful woman by his side. With a bright smile, Jo-won announces that he's heading out, causing Lizzie to look up at him with surprise. Teasingly pointing at each other, the couple shares a sweet moment before Jo-won bids her a playful farewell. Waving from the open doorway, Lizzie warmly tells him to take care as he steps out for the day. Walking through his yard, Jo-won remembers that Gus mentioned they would be hunting rabbits today. Entering his storage shed to fetch his gear, he wonders if they'll manage to catch any game out in the woods. Thinking of little Dorothy dancing happily with meat, Jo-won genuinely hopes they catch something to satisfy her constant cravings. Grabbing his hand axe, a wave of hesitation hits him as he wonders if he actually has the heart to kill a cute rabbit. Shaking his head vigorously, Jo-won tries to snap out of it, telling himself to throw away his soft modern sensibilities if he wants to survive. But as he pictures a cute, fluffy white rabbit sitting peacefully in a field of flowers, his resolve instantly crumbles. Imagining Lizzie as an adorable bunny, Jo-won finds the image way too sweet to handle. Blushing furiously and covering his face, he despairs over how he could ever kill a creature that reminds him so much of his wife. Looking up toward the dense forest, Jo-won desperately prays that if they do catch a rabbit, it turns out to be hideous. Deep in the dark bushes, a terrifying demon-like black rabbit with glowing red eyes and horns ominously lurks. Stepping out from his shed with his axe ready, Jo-won wipes his brow and lets out a long sigh before facing the hunt. Having already finished drawing water and chopping a massive stack of firewood, Jo-won realizes he still has plenty of free time left. Stretching his arms out in the bright morning air, he decides to use his spare time to practice some magic. Looking at his hands, he reflects on how easy healing magic has become, though he still can't produce even a single spark of fire. Remembering how his hand flared with heat during his desperate fight against the beast, Jo-won wonders why it worked back then. Pondering the mystery, he considers whether the magical spark was only triggered because his life was in immediate danger. Taking a deep breath, Jo-won focuses all his concentration on circulating the energy pooled in his core. Striking a dramatic pose, he thrusts his palm forward and forcefully shouts out "Firestorm." But absolutely nothing happens, leaving Jo-won standing in dead silence, deadpan but not even surprised by his failure. He thinks to himself that Dorothy would be thrilled to see fire, since healing magic doesn't glow or make flashy sounds to impress her. Sighing in disappointment, Jo-won lowers his hand, wishing he could at least show his daughter a little trick. But just as he lowers his guard, tiny red sparks suddenly flicker to life across his fingertips. A small flame ignites on his finger, though Jo-won awkwardly admits it looks more like a lighter flame than real fire magic. At that exact moment, little Dorothy rubs her sleepy eyes as she steps out through the cabin door. Blinking her eyes open, her expression instantly turns into complete astonishment when she catches sight of the flame. Pointing in total excitement, Dorothy shouts at the top of her lungs that her father is making fire with his hand. Jo-won carefully keeps the flame away from her, warning her not to get burned while she excitedly boasts about showing her mother. Starry-eyed with wonder, Dorothy leans in close, utterly mesmerized by the glowing fire at his fingertip. Hearing the commotion, Lizzie comes running out of the cabin to see what on earth is happening. Spotting the actual flame dancing on Jo-won's finger, Lizzie gasps in shock and covers her mouth in total disbelief. Seeing how happy they both are, Jo-won wishes he can make the flame bigger, glad that he can at least manage basic magic now. Suddenly, Lizzie's eyes widen with a sudden realization. Without saying another word, Lizzie abruptly turns on her heel and dashes right back into the cabin, leaving Jo-won bewildered. Little Dorothy quickly chases after her mother, running back inside the house. Left standing alone in the yard with his tiny flame, Jo-won feels completely underwhelmed after working so hard to pull it off. Looking at his finger, Jo-won suddenly realizes a new problem. He has absolutely no idea how to put the fire out. Shrugging off the inconvenience, he decides he'll just let the flame burn itself out naturally. But the moment he thinks that, the flame suddenly vanishes into thin air, leaving Jo-won thoroughly baffled. Scratching his head, Jo-won mutters that magic in this world makes no sense and is completely unpredictable. Shaking off the confusion, Jo-won turns around and steps back inside the cabin. Inside, he finds little Dorothy leaning over the wooden bucket with a gloomy expression. Looking back at him with big sad eyes, Dorothy complains that her meat portion has gotten way too small. Seeing her sulk over the leftover food, Lizzie smiles gently while Jo-won feels a surge of paternal guilt. Looking determined, Jo-won silently vows to himself that he will definitely bring home plenty of rabbit meat today. Right on cue, a familiar voice calls out from outside asking if he's ready, startling Jo-won. Stepping up to the doorway, old Gus stands waiting with his walking stick in hand, ready for the hunt. Grabbing his bow and strap, Jo-won announces to his family that he's heading out. Dorothy runs over to wish her dad a safe trip, making Jo-won smile warmly down at her. Patting her head softly, Jo-won calls her a good girl, and Dorothy beams with pure happiness as she agrees. Lizzie tells her to be careful out there, and Jo-won gently reminds her to take care of herself as well. Pulling Lizzie into a passionate goodbye kiss while little Dorothy watches in awe, Jo-won sets off for the hunt filled with love and purpose. Seeing her parents kiss, little Dorothy immediately pouts her lips and cutely demands a kiss of her own. Chuckling at her cute jealousy, Jo-won kneels down while Lizzie laughs softly in the background. Jo-won plants a sweet kiss on Dorothy's cheek, leaving the little girl jiggling with complete delight. But as he gets close, Jo-won smells meat on her breath and playfully accuses her of sneaking food, which Dorothy proudly admits. Leaving the cabin behind, Jo-won follows old Gus deeper into the mountain toward the animal snares, learning survival tips along the trail. As they walk, Gus points out various trees along the path, teaching Jo-won how to identify which wood makes the best firewood. Shortly after, the veteran hunter makes Jo-won stop to examine fresh rabbit droppings scattered on the ground. Suddenly, Gus raises his hand and commands Jo-won to halt right in his tracks. Pointing into the thick foliage ahead, Gus signals that they've finally reached one of their set traps. Jo-won leans forward and peeks through the bushes, his eyes widening in complete shock at what he sees. Expecting a cute little bunny, Jo-won is horrified to find a massive, muscular monster standing upright like a wild kangaroo. Dumbfounded by the bizarre creature, Jo-won realizes that in this fantasy world, even rabbits evolve like terrifying beasts. The snorting creature bears its razor-sharp fangs, snarling viciously with glowing yellow eyes. Observing the thrashing beast, Gus notes that it still has plenty of energy, making it the perfect target for Jo-won's first real hunt. The old hunter warns him that killing an aggressive monster will be far harder than taking down a defenseless animal. Gus reflects on how the visceral memory of a first kill stays with a hunter forever, emphasizing the gravity of the moment. Instructing Jo-won to draw his weapon, Gus tells him to pull an arrow from his quiver. Jo-won complies without hesitation, earning silent praise from Gus for how quickly he learns and adapts to mountain life. Looking at the young man, Gus sternly declares that this first hunt belongs entirely to Jo-won. As the beast struggles against its restraints, Gus vows to teach Jo-won the harsh, unforgiving reality of hunting. Telling him to step closer, Gus guides Jo-won into position to take his shot. To Jo-won's surprise, Gus commands him to shoot the rabbit's foot first, using the live target for cruel accuracy practice. Hesitating slightly, Jo-won realizes Gus wants him to practice aiming at a target thrashing in agonizing pain. Gus reminds him that the mountain is indifferent to human feelings, warning that showing mercy to beasts will eventually cost him his life. Knocking his arrow, Jo-won listens closely as Gus tells him never to forget this lesson if he wants to survive. Pulling back the bowstring, Jo-won feels uneasy about causing unnecessary pain to a trapped animal. Sweat drips down his face as he struggles to comprehend why Gus is pushing such a ruthless training method. Barking orders from behind, Gus repeatedly demands that he hit the foot first before aiming for the head. The demonic rabbit continues to snarl and drool, glaring back at Jo-won with pure malice. Looking into the beast's aggressive glare, a dark memory suddenly flashes through Jo-won's mind. He recalls his horrific past, waking up emaciated in a slave cage surrounded by decaying corpses. Stealing his resolve, Jo-won releases the arrow, cleanly piercing straight through the creature's hind leg and making it shriek in pain. Staring at his target in disbelief, Jo-won can hardly process that he actually managed to land the shot. Without giving him time to breathe, Gus immediately orders him to take another shot, catching Jo-won off guard. Instructing him to aim for the front paws next, Gus watches as Jo-won reaches for another arrow, trusting the elder's process. Drawing his bow again, Jo-won pushes aside his pity, reminding himself that his priority is feeding Lizzie and Dorothy. Blocking out the beast's agonizing roars, he convinces himself that those screams are nothing more than natural animal noises. Letting go of the string, the arrow cuts through the air with lethal velocity toward its mark. The arrowhead reflects directly in the glowing eye of the doomed beast as it flies straight for the target. Piercing the target with a brutal thud, Jo-won resolves that he will willingly become a monster if it means protecting his family. Resting in a quiet clearing, Jo-won reflects heavily on the fact that he intentionally caused the creature pain despite being able to kill it quickly. Sitting across from Gus as the old hunter bags the game, Jo-won admits that hunting isn't romantic, but a harsh reality of nature. Looking down at his hands, he reminds himself that survival demands tough choices, swearing never to forget the weight of what he did today. Handing Jo-won the heavy sack, Gus tells him to take all the rabbits they caught home, leaving Jo-won stunned by his generosity. Nodding kindly under his hood, the old hunter warmly accepts Jo-won's sincere gratitude. Standing up with his walking stick, Gus casually announces that it's time for them to go track down the very last rabbit. Peeking inside the sack, Jo-won gazes down at a small, live creature safely wrapped in cloth, looking far gentler than the previous beast. Following Gus through the woods, Jo-won points out that this rabbit looks entirely different from the monsters they caught earlier. But right in the middle of their walk, Jo-won suddenly halts in his tracks as a clever idea pops into his head. He considers raising the rabbits instead of killing them, realizing they reproduce quickly and could serve as reliable emergency rations for his family. Turning to Gus while crossing his arms, Jo-won stumbles through his limited vocabulary to explain that he wants to keep the rabbit alive. Hearing his broken explanation, Gus bursts into a soft, amused chuckle at the young man's sudden ambition to raise livestock. With a warm smile, the veteran hunter readily agrees to the plan, catching Jo-won completely by surprise. Handing over the sack, Gus tells him to capture the target alive, and Jo-won eagerly accepts the challenge. Carrying the sack with renewed enthusiasm, Jo-won treks alongside Gus deeper into the sunlit woods. Treading lightly through the grass, Jo-won carefully stalks forward to avoid scaring away his target. Up ahead in the foliage, a small black rabbit sits unaware, completely oblivious to the approaching hunter. Later that afternoon, the scene shifts to the village workshop where Gus and Jo-won work side by side. Watching the elder, Jo-won reflects on his past life in the real world, where he had no family and lived without any real purpose. Whittling a piece of wood with a small knife, he realizes that building a life for his new family finally gives his hard work actual meaning. A quiet sense of fulfillment washes over Jo-won as he appreciates having people in his life worth protecting and providing for. But as he looks around the room, his eyes suddenly catch sight of a wooden box sitting quietly on a side table. Examining the wooden tablets inside, Jo-won recognizes the carved symbols as the written language of this fantasy world. Grabbing one of the tablets in excitement, Jo-won realizes this is his big chance to finally learn how to read and write. Rushing over to Gus, Jo-won desperately tries to ask the old man to teach him the language carved into the wood. Looking at him in disbelief, Gus asks if he's truly serious about wanting to learn to read, and Jo-won nods eagerly. Scratching his head in thought, the old hunter pauses for a moment before deciding to humor the young man's enthusiasm. Walking over to his storage chest in the corner, Gus begins rummaging through his old personal belongings. Reaching deep in the wooden box, Gus searches for the old study materials he had put away long ago. He pulls out a set of linked wooden letter tablets and hands them over, telling Jo-won he can have all of them to practice. Instructing Jo-won to follow him to the study desk, Gus agrees to teach him everything he knows. Seated at the table, Jo-won carefully grips a feather quill and begins tracing the foreign characters on a parchment paper. Watching him practice, Gus wonders to himself why a simple mountain hunter would be so determined to learn how to read. Staring at the wooden tablets, Gus recalls buying them years ago when he still dreamed of earning military glory and serving a noble lord. Looking down at his old feet, the old hunter sighs, remembering how much effort it took him to learn literacy for a dream that never came true. Shaking off his nostalgic regrets, Gus tells himself that the past is over and there's no point dwelling on old disappointments. Looking out the window toward the distant peaks, Gus realizes it's time to start scouting the mountains for signs of goblin activity. He knows that as spring approaches, wild goblins become far more aggressive and active across the mountain territory. Watching Jo-won study diligently, Gus acknowledges how quickly the young man learns, confident he'll hold his own alongside experienced hunters. Massaging his throbbing, injured leg, Gus ominously notes that the itching in his old wound means a confrontation with the goblins is drawing near. With a dark and sinister aura surrounding him, old Gus ominously vows to slaughter every last goblin plaguing the mountain. Meanwhile, back at Jo-won's peaceful wooden cabin, the afternoon sun shines brightly over the quiet clearing. Inside, Lizzie sits on the floor carefully cutting fabric with scissors while an excited Dorothy asks if the new clothes are for her. Lizzie giggles softly, teasing Dorothy for asking the exact same question for the 100th time that day. Suddenly, the wooden front door creaks open, prompting Lizzie to look up expecting her husband's return. Spotting Jo-won standing at the entrance, little Dorothy squeals in pure delight and runs toward him with open arms. Jo-won scoops her up in a big hug, smiling warmly as Dorothy excitedly shows off her brand new outfit. Setting his heavy sack down on the wooden floor while holding Dorothy, Jo-won suddenly gasps in surprise. Right before their eyes, the cloth bag on the floor begins squirming and bouncing around all on its own. Astonished by the moving bag, Dorothy naively asks her dad if he's performing some kind of magical bag spell. Assuring her it's not magic, Jo-won impressively untees the tight knot with one hand while effortlessly holding Dorothy with the other. Kneeling down beside him, Lizzie reaches out to lend a hand with opening the mysterious bag. All of a sudden, a pair of long ears pops right out from the opening of the sack. Pointing in total shock, Dorothy gasps loudly as the mysterious creature inside wriggles around. Realizing what it is, the little girl wriggles out of Jo-won's arms and dashes forward, shouting in excitement that it's a rabbit. Cautiously raising her hand, Lizzie warns Dorothy to stay back while she safely extracts the animal from the bag. Reaching inside the sack with both hands, Lizzie gently lifts the mysterious creature out into the open. To everyone's utter shock, a plump, fluffy white bunny tumbles out onto the wooden floor. Covering her mouth in total astonishment, Dorothy points out that there's something very strange about this rabbit. Taking a closer look at the creature's head, the family notices an unusual detail protruding from its forehead. Standing upright on its hind legs, the fluffy white rabbit reveals a tiny, sharp horn right between its ears. While Dorothy swoons over how adorable the horned bunny is, Lizzie nervously warns her daughter not to get too close. Approaching with extreme caution, Lizzie warns that a horned beast could easily be wild and dangerous. Reassuring her daughter, Lizzie slowly creeps toward the animal, offering to catch it safely for her. With a determined gasp, Lizzie lunges forward with both hands outstretched to grab the creature. To her complete bewilderment, Lizzie easily scoops the tiny rabbit right up without it even putting up a fight. Holding the docile animal in her arms, Lizzie stands there thoroughly confused, knowing a wild beast should never be caught this effortlessly. But as she holds it close, the rabbit suddenly twitches and whimpers in distress, catching Lizzie's attention. Examining its body, Lizzie gasps with concern as she realizes the poor little bunny is actually injured. Seeing the creature suffer, Dorothy tugs on her mother's dress in a panic, heartbroken that the bunny is in pain. Tearfully turning to her father, Dorothy pleads with Jo-won to help the hurt animal. Stepping forward with a reassuring look, Jo-won tells her to hand the rabbit over so he can fix it up. Lizzie gently passes the trembling horned bunny into Jo-won's waiting hands. Cradling the fragile creature softly, Jo-won prepares to use his newly awakened magic. A warm golden glow erupts from his hands, enveloping the injured rabbit in a soothing bath of healing energy. As the magical sparkles fade away, Dorothy gasps in pure delight, noticing that the bunny's pain has completely vanished. Overjoyed by the miraculous display, Dorothy beams up at Jo-won and loudly declares that her papa is the most amazing person ever. Swelling with pride, Jo-won clears his throat nervously while Lizzie claps happily and Dorothy clings tightly to his leg. Carefully bending down, Jo-won sets the freshly healed rabbit back onto the floor, only for Dorothy to tell him to wait. Turning around, Jo-won sees Dorothy waddling back into the room, proudly carrying a woven wicker basket for their new pet. Gently leaning down, Jo-won carefully places the sleeping horned bunny into the wicker basket Dorothy is holding out. Nestled comfortably inside the basket, the cute little creature curls up into a tight ball and falls fast asleep. Jo-won smiles warmly and tells Dorothy to protect her new friend, though the little girl doesn't quite catch his words. Lizzie chuckles softly and translates, explaining that her father wants her to take good care of the baby bunny. Hugging the basket tightly to her chest, Dorothy beams with joy and promises to take the absolute best care of her pet. Sitting together on the cabin floor, Dorothy gently strokes the sleeping bunny while promising to keep it safe forever. Watching their daughter fall in love with her new pet, Jo-won and Lizzie exchange a warm, affectionate smile. Later that night, a serene calm settles over the cozy wooden cabin nestled deep in the quiet forest. Tucked under her warm blanket, little Dorothy sleeps peacefully with her basketed bunny right beside her bed. In the main room, Jo-won and Lizzie sit together by candlelight while Jo-won reflects on how human desire naturally grows over time. Looking around their cozy home, he remembers being grateful just to escape slavery, but now he constantly wants to build a better life for his family. As Lizzie patiently helps him sound out words from the wooden tablets, Jo-won works hard to master reading and writing. Gazing softly at Lizzie beside him, Jo-won feels an overwhelming wave of gratitude for having such a wonderful wife. Realizing how hard she worked all day long, Jo-won decides it's his turn to take care of her. Stepping up behind her, he gently places his large hands onto her shoulders to give her a relaxing massage. Taken by surprise by his sudden touch, Lizzie blushes softly and stammers out a shy thank you. Feeling his warm, gentle hands knead away her fatigue, Lizzie's cheeks turn bright red as a cozy warmth fills her heart. Slowly rubbing her tired shoulders, Jo-won expresses his deep affection through every tender touch. Their fingers gently entwine as the sweet, romantic atmosphere inside the room deepens. Pulling her close, Jo-won wraps his arms around Lizzie in a loving embrace, leaving her breathless with happiness. Holding each other tightly under the dim lantern light, the couple shares a quiet, romantic night together. As the candle burns low and blows out, night passes and gives way to a bright new morning. Meanwhile, miles away on a bumpy dirt road, a line of horse-drawn carriages makes its long journey toward the distant capital. Crammed uncomfortably inside a crowded wagon, the village chief grumbles about his aching back and the steep travel expenses. But he consoles himself with greed, knowing that high-to-healing mages are usually fragile and rare commodities. Recalling Jo-won's towering physique and raw power, the chief knows an exceptionally strong healer will fetch an extraordinary price. A scheming smirk spreads across his face as he imagines cashing in on Jo-won's secrets for a massive fortune in gold coins. Nearby, the other passengers gossip about state affairs, wondering if their kingdom will summon a legendary hero to fight their battles. They debate rumors of the temple summoning a hero, questioning whether the hero summoned in the enemy nation is genuine or fake. A stern passenger scoffs at the tales, arguing that legendary heroes haven't been seen in centuries and any imposter would be exposed instantly. Overhearing their talk of war, the chief feels a sudden surge of anxiety, remembering how close their territory is to the enemy border. Anxious to secure his future, he resolves to sell Jo-won's secrets immediately so he can grab the money and flee before war breaks out. Back at the cabin, a cheerful morning begins as little Dorothy excitedly tries to wake up her sleeping horned bunny to play. Seeing her lean over the basket, Lizzie playfully warns her daughter that the bunny isn't meant for eating. Pouting playfully, Dorothy scoffs at her mom, indignantly declaring that even she knows better than to eat a cute little baby bunny. Wiping away a stray drop of drool from Dorothy's cheek, Lizzie teases her daughter, prompting Dorothy to suddenly remember the bunny's breakfast. Brightening up instantly, the energetic little girl dashes out the door to go feed her new pet. Stepping into the sunlit yard, Dorothy stops near a sturdy wooden structure Jo-won built, wondering why he set up a fence outside. Suddenly, a light bulb goes off in her head as she finally puts two and two together. Looking at the cozy wooden coop Jaewon built for the rabbits, Dorothy giggles with delight as she steps up to feed them. Looking over the wooden fence at the rabbits, little Dorothy squints her eyes and quietly observes that the big rabbit really does look massive and ugly. Holding a fresh bundle of green leaves, she warmly offers the food to the animals, telling them to go ahead and eat up. She cheerfully explains to the rabbits that she's going to be busy today, so they'll have to be good and eat by themselves. But as she sets the plants down, she suddenly notices that the pile of food seems to magically multiply right before her eyes. Realizing what just happened, Dorothy beams with excitement, convinced that she can use magic now and eager to show her father when he gets back. She immediately imagines using her new power on the wolf meat to create a giant feast, picturing her parents applauding her in complete awe. Filled with pure delight, the little girl throws her arms in the air and cheers happily outside the rabbit pen. Meanwhile, inside the house, Lizzie sits cradling the large wolf pelt, worried that they'll be in trouble if they can't buy essential supplies when the merchant carriage arrives. She knows the merchant would pay a great price for the pelt, but since it's the very first prey Jaewon hunted, she really hates the idea of selling it. Thinking about everything her family desperately needs, from new clothes and boots for Jaewon to cooking pots and water canteens, Lizzie tries to think of another way. She looks down at a small rabbit pelt on the table, quickly realizing that a single hide won't be nearly enough to buy what they need. Coming to a quiet resolve, a serious and determined look washes over her face. She slowly gathers her long, beautiful hair in her hands, preparing to make a sacrifice for the sake of her family. Without hesitating any longer, she firmly picks up a sharp pair of scissors resting on the table. A short while later, Jaewon arrives back home from his errand, calling out to his wife and daughter as he approaches the house. The moment he steps through the door, little Dorothy excitedly runs straight into her father's arms for a big welcome hug. Lizzie walks over to greet him with a warm and gentle smile as he arrives back home. However, as soon as Jaewon looks at her, his eyes widen in total shock while Dorothy chimingly asks if he noticed it too. Lizzie has cut her long hair short, standing before him with a modest smile despite the dramatic change in her appearance. Heartbroken by what he sees, Jaewon gazes at her with a pained look, unable to hide his distress. Little Dorothy looks up in confusion and asks where all her long hair went, to which Lizzie simply answers that she cut it. The little girl pouts unhappily, complaining that her mother's long hair was so pretty and shouldn't have been cut off. Jaewon immediately puts the pieces together and realizes she sacrificed her hair to sell it for money, feeling immense guilt over her sacrifice. Taking a step closer to her, he gently calls out her name with deep affection. He softly touches her short hair and apologizes from the bottom of his heart for failing to provide enough so that she wouldn't have to cut it. Lizzie stares at him in surprise, inwardly thinking that he truly is a remarkably unusual and emotional man. She knows that in this tough world, most women view growing their hair long merely as a resource to cut and sell whenever times get hard. Yet seeing Jaewon show genuine remorse and tenderness over something so minor touches her deeply, bringing tears to her eyes. She wraps her arms tightly around his neck and hugs him close, crying tears not of sorrow but of overwhelming happiness. Watching her parents' embrace so lovingly fills little Dorothy's heart with warmth and joy as she smiles brightly at them. Later, as they prepare to head into town, Jaewon straps Dorothy onto a wooden backpack frame while telling Lizzie that carrying her too would be a bit too heavy. Standing tall with a happy smile, our MC carries his daughter on his back while she waves her hand in pure excitement. With everything packed and Dorothy happily cheering them on, the family sets off together on the path leading to the village market. Before long, they arrive at a bustling market town filled with wooden shops and lively crowds of villagers going about their day. Little Dorothy excitedly trots ahead of her parents, taking in the lively atmosphere and sniffing the delicious food smells floating through the air. Looking around at the busy street, Jaewon reflects on how long it's been since he walked through a crowd, recalling his former life back on Earth. As villagers pass by them in the busy alleyways, he finds himself lost in thought while taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. Walking alongside his new family amidst the crowd, memories from his past life begin to surface in his mind. He remembers walking through a cold, snowy modern city on Christmas Day, watching happy families pass by while remaining completely alone. Back then, despite being surrounded by hundreds of people, he had walked through the crowd isolated and detached, feeling like an outsider with nobody by his side. But now, he has a loving wife walking by his side and a cheerful child who's thrilled to explore the world with him. Feeling a sudden surge of happiness, Jaewon smiles warmly to himself, finally understanding how special it feels to walk around with family. Suddenly distracted by something nearby, little Dorothy dashes straight toward one of the market stalls ahead. Stopping right in front of the counter, she eagerly announces that she wants to look at the merchant's display items. The merchant calls out loudly to the crowd, offering top money for valuable goods as Jaewon and Lizzie catch up to Dorothy. The little girl stares up at the merchant stall with wide eyes, completely captivated by everything on display. Nearby, a young blonde boy spots Dorothy and looks at her with a surprised expression. Dorothy points at the boy and bluntly says he looks scary, resembles something she saw before, instantly annoying him. Jaewon wonders what on earth his daughter is talking about, while Lizzie gently reminds him to keep a close eye on the little girl. Stepping up to the counter, Lizzie carefully places her cut hair along with the brown rabbit pelt to negotiate a trade. The merchant inspects the goods with a stern look while Jo-won stands silently behind Lizzie. The merchant sighs and claims that the price has dropped drastically because they've received too many pelts like this recently. In reality, the greedy merchant internally admits that the fur is exceptionally thick and high quality, but resolves to hide the truth to scam her. Telling her that he can only offer cheap items in return, he feels smug seeing Lizzie become visibly disheartened by his words. The merchant prepares to hand over a few worthless items, confident that his trickery is working perfectly. But before he can finish, Jo-won looms ominously right behind Lizzie, exuding a terrifying aura that leaves the merchant completely stunned. Shocked by his towering physique and cold stare, the merchant and his assistant freeze up in utter tension. Without saying a word, Jo-won reaches down and snatches both the hair and the pelt off the counter. The merchant tries to stop him, but Jo-won firmly grabs his hand, crushing his grip and leaving the trader groaning in pain from his incredible strength. Jo-won tells Lizzie they should leave for another town because he can tell by the man's eyes that he's lying, leaving the merchant panicked. When Lizzie nervously worries that going to another town is far too far, Jo-won calmly assures her that they can make the trip quickly. Realizing he lost his chance, the merchant panics inwardly, astonished that this giant cut him off completely before bargaining even began. Pointing out the pelt's excellent condition, Jo-won directly tells Lizzie that the trader was lying to take advantage of her. The merchant nervously stammers that he was just giving the market rate, but Lizzie instantly realizes he tried to cheat her due to her lack of experience. Desperate to secure the rare items, the merchant quickly changes his tune, promising to throw in salt, a cooking pot, and men's clothes at a loss. Lizzie gives the manipulative merchant a sharp glare, completely disgusted by his sudden change of attitude. Refusing to deal with a dishonest trader, Lizzie grabs Jo-won's arm and announces that they're leaving to find someone who will treat them fairly. As they walk away, Jo-won offers to carry her since the next shop is far, but Lizzie sweetly declines, saying she can walk just fine. The dishonest merchant watches them walk away in total despair, lamenting that he just blew his chance to acquire high-grade merchandise. He desperately shouts for them to wait, but Jo-won and Lizzie don't even bother turning back as they keep walking. Realizing he ruined his own golden opportunity through greed, the merchant sits back down, completely defeated. Leaving the miserable merchant behind, Jo-won and Lizzie continue strolling through the market together in high spirits. Meanwhile, little Dorothy is busy boasting about how strong her father is to the other kids until Lizzie comes over to call her. Proudly declaring to everyone around that Jo-won is her dad, the adorable girl happily runs to catch up with her parents. Tucked snugly inside Jo-won's large coat while he carries her, Dorothy feels completely safe and cozy knowing her super strong dad is protecting her. Snuggled up against his warmth, she wonders to herself why it feels so cozy when she was feeling cold just a moment ago. Remembering that she's tucked safely inside her father's warm coat, the little girl smiles as her parents walk through the peaceful woods. Suddenly popping her head out from his coat collar, she suddenly remembers the rabbits back home and gasps out loud. She urgently begs her dad to put her down so she can feed the rabbits, causing Lizzie to giggle softly at her daughter's sudden outburst. Smiling warmly at his cute daughter, Jo-won carefully sets her down on the ground so she can walk on her own. As soon as they get back home, Dorothy happily dashes straight toward the rabbit pen, shouting to her bunnies that she's finally back. She eagerly picks up a fresh, lush bundle of green leaves to feed her beloved pets. Carrying the food tightly in her hands, she trots right over to the wooden pen to give them their meal. But the moment she reaches the pen, her eyes widen in total shock at what she sees inside. The rabbit coop is completely empty, and the bunnies are nowhere to be found. Heartbroken by the sight, the poor little girl drops her leaves and bursts into tears right on the spot. Hearing her crying, Lizzie rushes over in a panic to check on her, while Dorothy sobs out that the rabbits have disappeared. Lizzie gasps in dismay as Dorothy wails loudly, begging the missing rabbits to come back home. Hearing all the noise outside, Jo-won steps out of the house to see what all the commotion is about. When he finds out that both his daughter and wife are crying simply because a rabbit escaped, Jo-won looks completely bewildered. Seeing Lizzie crying as well, Jo-won asks why she's upset, and she tearfully explains that she feels bad because he worked so hard to catch it. Jo-won stares at them in utter disbelief, unable to grasp why an escaped rabbit is causing such a dramatic emotional breakdown. Meanwhile, deep within the dark forest nearby, a terrifying goblin with glowing red eyes sneaks through the shadows. Watching the monster from the trees, an old hooded hunter restrains himself, knowing that attacking the horde alone would be suicidal. He knows the goblin camp is overcrowded, and once their supplies run out, the monsters will inevitably turn on each other in chaos. However, he worries that if even a single rogue goblin loses control and attacks the village, the entire pack will go wild and launch a full raid. He understands that while an individual goblin is weak compared to other beasts, their true threat lies in their pack behavior. They swarm their enemies in overwhelming numbers and reproduce as rapidly as rabbits, making them nearly impossible to eradicate. Even worse, goblins kidnap human women from surrounding lands to expand their numbers, inflicting endless suffering upon their victims. Knowing that the arrival of spring will trigger their breeding season, the old man knows the pack must be wiped out before then. To carry out such a dangerous extermination, he determines that he desperately needs the help of the giant warrior Jo-won. Though taking advantage of Jo-won's pure and grateful nature weighs heavily on his conscience, the old man feels he has no other choice. Walking deeper into the forest, he convinces himself that manipulating Jo-won is the only way to save the region from the goblin threat. The next morning back at the cottage, Lizzie stretches and yawns as she steps outside to start her day. She spots Jo-won working inside the outdoor storage shed and calls out to him. Curious about what he's doing so early, she walks across the yard toward the open shed. She gasps in utter shock when she sees a massive rabbit hanging inside the shed while Jo-won greets her warmly. She asks in amazement if he managed to catch another wild rabbit already today, and Jo-won sheepishly scratches his head. It turns out Jo-won spent the early morning sprinting through the woods and diving through the brush like a maniac. He had crashed face first onto the ground after missing his target as the fast wild rabbit bounded away. The wild rabbit had even stopped to stare back at him smugly, completely mocking his clumsy attempts to capture it alive. Getting back up on his knees, Jo-won had realized that catching a wild rabbit alive without hurting it was nearly impossible. Refusing to go home empty-handed and disappoint his crying family, he had fueled his spirit with pure determination to hunt it down. Relentlessly chasing the wild animal through the forest, he gave everything he had until he finally secured the catch. Brushing off his chaotic morning, Jo-won proudly boasts that catching it was a breeze, prompting Lizzie to clap in admiration. With a bright smile on her face, Lizzie eagerly asks how they should prepare the fresh rabbit meat for their meal. When Jo-won suggests salting it while Lizzie offers to roast it, they briefly confuse each other with their simultaneous answers. Realizing the slight mix-up, Jo-won quickly laughs it off and agrees that roasting it together sounds like the perfect idea. Lizzie happily takes the rabbit, promising to cook an absolutely delicious meal that he can look forward to eating. Sitting by the fire outdoors, Jo-won carefully roasts the meat over aromatic leaves, eagerly anticipating the rich and savory flavor. While roasting the meat, Jo-won notices the campfire starting to flicker and die down once again. Focusing his mind, a tiny ember of fire suddenly ignites at the very tip of his finger. He looks at the weak little flame with a sigh, thinking how pathetic this magical gift seems despite its potential usefulness. Wanting to finish cooking before Lizzie and Dorothy get hungry, he turns the roast over the fire to cook it evenly. Deciding to test his flame, he touches his burning fingertip directly against the meat. The moment his finger makes contact, a burst of intense fire instantly engulfs the entire roast. Panicking, Jo-won frantically waves his hand and begs the fire to stop before it burns his family's meal. Surprised that his magic finally activated properly after so many failed attempts, he begins analyzing how the trigger actually works. He remembers that when he ignited the wolf earlier, the fire didn't generate from his own body, but formed directly on the target itself. Realizing his magic applies directly on the object rather than emitting from his hands, he understands why he never gets burned and decides to test it further. Kneeling down, he touches the roast once more and envisions gentle flames wrapping around the meat to cook it perfectly. He focuses all his mental imagery on controlling the heat, willing the meat to turn a flawless golden brown. To his amazement, the fire responds to his will, wrapping around the meat without scorching it. Seeing the roast sizzle to perfection, Jo-won realizes he's finally figured out how to properly control and trigger his magic. He smiles proudly at his achievement, thrilled that he managed to cook a flawless rotisserie roast using his newly controlled fire magic. When he brings the dish inside, Lizzie and Dorothy gasp in awe at the appetizing sight and irresistible aroma of the whole roast. Little Dorothy bounces up and down cheering for meat, while Lizzie looks at him in utter curiosity about his cooking method. Jo-won easily pulls apart the juicy, tender meat, revealing how perfectly cooked it is on the inside. With a warm smile, he hands the 2 roasted legs over to his wife and daughter, telling them to go ahead and dig in. Both Lizzie and little Dorothy happily take a massive bite of the hot, savory meat. Their eyes light up instantly as Dorothy gushes with joy over how delicious and flavorful the roast tastes. Watching his family eat with such pure delight fills Jo-won with immense satisfaction and warmth. After that cozy meal, Jo-won realized that controlling fire magic became much easier once he understood its core principles. Practicing in the forest, he learns to ignite targets up to 50 centimeters away with a powerful burst of flame. Looking at the scorched rock, he realizes that applying this instant ignition directly onto enemies makes it a truly terrifying weapon. Possessing both fire magic and healing magic, Jo-won feels confident that he now has the power to protect Lizzie and Dorothy from any danger. He wonders if the mysterious Santa who granted him this second chance gave him these powers specifically to safeguard his new family. Feeling genuinely grateful, he resolves to build a small altar and offer food to Santa when Christmas rolls around. Suddenly, a loud voice echoes from the cottage announcing that the rabbit has finally woken up. Inside the house, little Dorothy carries the horned rabbit in a basket, excitedly promising to show it around their home. She starts her tour in the kitchen, introducing the fireplace where all their meals are prepared. The little horned rabbit perks up its ears and listens quietly as Dorothy declares the kitchen to be a very important room. She then points at a plain wooden wall, leaving the little horned rabbit looking utterly bewildered by the lesson. Next, Dorothy carries the basket over to her mother, telling the pet that it's time to meet someone very special. Presenting the rabbit right in front of Lizzie's face, Dorothy instructs her new pet never to forget her mother. Just then, the wooden front door opens as Jo-won steps inside the house. Dorothy eagerly rushes up to him with the basket, telling the rabbit to say hello to her father. But then, Dorothy suddenly announces to Jo-won that the rabbit's name is Dorothy, catching him completely off guard. Perplexed, Jo-won looks over at Lizzie and asks what on earth Dorothy means by naming the rabbit after herself. Lizzie stands there looking flustered with a guilty blush, avoiding his gaze as the real reason behind the name remains a mystery. Jo-won suddenly gasps in shock as a wild idea pops into his head while looking at Lizzie. He stares at her slender figure in complete disbelief, unable to process what he's thinking. Overwhelmed by his assumption, Jo-won drops to one knee right before her. He gently reaches for her waist, fully believing that she must be pregnant with another child. Lizzie turns beet red and gasps out loud, completely taken aback by his unexpected actions. Panicking, Lizzie frantically waves her hands and shuts him down, loudly clarifying that she is definitely not pregnant. Rubbing the back of his neck in embarrassment, Jo-won mentally agrees that it's probably better to wait until they're more financially stable. Little Dorothy tilts her head in confusion, asking her father why he's kneeling on the floor like that. Looking at his daughter, Jo-won resolves to focus on giving Dorothy all the love and affection she was denied in the past. Dorothy giggles warmly, innocently telling her dad that he looks just like her little rabbit right now. Later on, Jo-won considers the pet rabbit, noting that its small horn seems to be growing larger at a noticeable pace. Staring closely at the creature, he realizes there might be something far more unusual about this horned rabbit than he initially thought. He begins to wonder if keeping a potentially dangerous fantasy beast inside their home is actually safe for his family. He originally debated throwing the creature out, or keeping it locked outside to avoid any risks. However, both Lizzie and Dorothy protested so fiercely to protect the pet that Jo-won was forced to give in. Fortunately, aside from its sharp horn, the little creature continued to act just like a gentle, harmless bunny. Jo-won wishes the experienced hunter Gus were around to identify the beast, noting that Gus hasn't visited in 5 days. Knowing Gus suffers from an old leg injury, Jo-won worries about the elderly hunter trekking alone through the dangerous mountains. He considers using his secret healing magic to fix the old man's leg once they build enough trust. Grateful for everything Gus has taught him, Jo-won sincerely wants to find a way to repay the old hunter's kindness. In an unfamiliar world where he and his family have no relatives, he hopes to build meaningful bonds with those around them. He envisions Gus becoming like a loving grandfather to Dorothy and a dependable father figure to Lizzie. Sitting cross-legged in his training yard, Jo-won reminds himself that flashy magic is too risky in a world where mages are rare. Closing his eyes, he practices containing the fire internally so he can utilize its heat discreetly without drawing attention. He visualizes his inner mana core as a glowing active volcano burning with intense molten lava. Focusing all his willpower, he directs the invisible thermal energy through his hand toward the wooden posts. Opening his eyes, he looks ahead anxiously to see if his internal fire magic actually took effect. Seeing the wooden post sitting unharmed, he sighs, wondering if his mana visualization was flawed or too weak. He lets out a disappointed breath and lowers his hand, assuming his attempt was a total failure. But suddenly, the wooden stakes burst into brilliant flames from the inside out, catching him completely by surprise. Panicking at the sudden blaze, he quickly grabs a nearby wooden bucket full of water to put it out. He throws the water directly on the flaming stakes, splashing it everywhere to douse the fire. Looking at the burnt remains, he realizes the spell was burning the wood from within the entire time before breaking through the surface. Thrilled that his internal fire magic worked so flawlessly, Jo-won smiles with pride until he hears Dorothy calling out to him. Little Dorothy runs across the yard to let her father know that their delicious rabbit meal is ready to eat. The energetic little girl leaps into the air with open arms to jump straight into her dad's arms. Catching her safely, Jo-won gently warns her not to jump so high, while Dorothy happily reminds him about the food. Carrying his daughter on his hip, he walks back toward the house as Dorothy cheers happily for rabbit meat. Suddenly, a terrifying, blood-curdling scream echoes from deep within the forest, making Jo-won freeze in his tracks. Sensing immediate danger, Jo-won turns his head sharply toward the woods, his relaxed smile vanishing instantly. Looking up at the sky, Jo-won notices a flock of birds strangely circling high above the mountain trees. He realizes he's never seen birds behaving like that since arriving in this world, feeling an ominous urge to investigate. However, little Dorothy tugs on his shirt, loudly reminding him that their rabbit meat will get cold if they don't eat now. Apologizing to his daughter, Jo-won puts aside his worries for the moment and carries her back toward the house. A short while later, the old hunter Gus arrives at the front gate and calls Jo-won outside. Jo-won steps outside in surprise, wondering why the old man showed up now when he usually visits at dawn. Gus comments on the sturdy bamboo fence, and Jo-won explains that it's to keep out wild mountain wolves and dangerous strangers. Asking what brought him by so unexpectedly, Gus reveals that he has come to teach him how to craft a bow. Gus tells him they'll start with a simple toy bow first before attempting a real hunting weapon, and Jo-won eagerly agrees. Gus urges him to hurry along, stating that they don't have much time to waste. The two walk over to a pile of wooden logs stored beside the shed to begin their woodwork lesson. Gus grabs a hand axe and positions a log on a stump, instructing Jo-won to watch his movements closely. With practiced precision, the old hunter strikes the top of the wood to prepare it for splitting. He then holds up a small wooden wedge, explaining that this tool is essential for splitting timber cleanly. Positioned on the crack, he hammers the wedge deeper into the log with a wooden mallet. He advises Jo-won never to drive it too deep at once, but rather work incrementally step by step. Watching the log split smoothly down the center, Jo-won realizes that using multiple wedges distributes the force evenly. As the lesson progresses, sunlight bathes the peaceful homestead in a warm glow. Moving inside to assemble the arrows, Gus continues lecturing, though Jo-won begins to feel that something about his demeanor is slightly off. Noting how hastily the old man rushes through every single step, Jo-won senses that Gus is acting like he's running out of time. Unable to ignore his suspicion, Jo-won asks if something dangerous is happening on the mountain, but Gus dismisses his concern. Jo-won mentions the scavenger birds circling in the sky earlier, prompting Gus to claim it's just wolves attacking stray humans. Handing him a freshly crafted practice arrow, Gus abruptly tells Jo-won to take it in practice on his own. Jo-won bows politely in gratitude as the old hunter dismisses him, promising to teach him more another day. Holding the arrow, Jo-won walks back toward his home while Gus stands alone, quietly watching his back. Hidden under his hood, the old man's expression darkens into a chilling, ruthless gaze. In reality, Gus reveals his true plot, remembering how he warned the village chief about a goblin pack days ago. Upon hearing the news, the village chief immediately dispatched a messenger to the nearby town to request help. That town houses a guild branch capable of dispatching professional adventurers to clear out monster threats. Knowing the guild actively deals with monster infestations, Gus calculated that a team of adventurers would soon be assigned to the quest. Although the adventurers are on their way, Gus knows goblins act rapidly and unpredictable chaos could erupt at any moment. He knows that the scavenger crows Jo-won spotted were already feasting on the victims of a fresh goblin massacre. He pinpoints the location of the attack, remembering a small, isolated group living in a secluded mountain compound nearby. He surmises that one of the women living in that camp inadvertently attracted the bloodthirsty goblin's attention. Once the monster pack slaughters that secluded camp, their unchecked hunger will inevitably drive them to raid Jo-won's home next. Coldly calculating, Gus believes that innocent lives are merely necessary sacrifices to achieve his grand ambitions. He believes that a man with Jo-won's incredible physical strength will easily survive the impending slaughter. Even if Jo-won loses his wife in the horrifying raid, Gus feels no remorse for the impending tragedy. He cruelly reasons that even if Jo-won's heart breaks over Lizzie's death, a strong man like him easily replace her and start over. Standing on his porch, the ruthless old hunter looks toward the mountain, declaring that he has finally found the ultimate hunting ground for his final days. Out in the dark forest, a terrifying goblin with glowing red eyes leaps through the shadows. Meanwhile, back at home, Jo-won bursts out laughing while little Dorothy cries softly in frustration. Pouting with tears in her eyes, Dorothy pounds her tiny fists against his leg and says she hates him, making Jo-won find them both ridiculously cute. Standing together in the sunlight, Jo-won feels deeply happy knowing they can laugh and cry together over the simplest little things. Elsewhere, Gus pulls a massive, heavy iron broadsword out of storage, reflecting on his long life as a hunter. He firmly wraps both hands around the hilt, testing the weight of the ancient weapon. Standing alone in the dark woods, the old man looks into the distance, muttering that the moment has finally arrived. Resting the heavy blade on the ground, he envisions Jo-won and his family, knowing what must be done. With a stern glare, he inwardly confirms that he has successfully located the goblin village. He recalls the horrifying sight of human captives held in cramped cells, stripped of all humanity by the monsters. Meanwhile, Jo-won confronts the realities of nature as a vicious horned beast lunges forward. Practicing in the forest, Jo-won draws back a bowstring, understanding that Gus was trying to train him to survive as a true hunter. With a focused gaze, he smoothly releases the arrow from his fingers. The shaft flies swiftly through the trees, pinpointing the target with lethal precision. Later that evening, Lizzie steps out into the chilly night air, shivering slightly as she looks outside. She spots Jo-won still working hard outside near the bamboo fence despite the freezing cold. Carrying a steaming bowl of hot food, Lizzie walks across the yard to check on her husband. Turning around, Jo-won asks why she came out into the cold night air instead of staying inside where it's warm. She holds out the steaming bowl of hearty stew, gently insisting that he eat something to warm up. Jo-won thanks her and asks her to go back inside, but Lizzie softly replies that she wants to stay by his side while he eats. Touched by her sweetness, a faint blush spreads across Jo-won's face as he smiles warmly. Sitting together by the crackling campfire, Jo-won enjoys the hot meal and praises her cooking. Lizzie smiles radiantly, expressing how glad she is that he enjoys the food she prepared. Staring softly at her beautiful smile, Jo-won is overwhelmed by deep love and tenderness. He gently wraps his arms around her from behind, pulling her close against his chest in a warm embrace. Leaning his head beside hers, he whispers how grateful he is to have her, while Lizzie blushes and echoes his sweet sentiment. Basking in the glow of the roaring fire, the two hold each other tightly, enjoying the quiet serenity of the night. The next day down by the stream, Jo-won tells Lizzie she doesn't need to help with the heavy laundry, but she insists it's faster together. Wringing out the heavy wet cloth with his bare hands, Jo-won mentally laughs at how much he misses modern washing machines. He reflects on the exhausting daily chore of soaking clothes in lye, rinsing them in river water, and hanging them to dry before sunrise. Realizing that Lizzie had to manage all this backbreaking labor completely alone in the past makes him appreciate her even more. Suddenly, little Dorothy comes running down to the stream carrying her basket, calling out cheerfully to her parents. Holding up the horned bunny, Dorothy urgently asks her dad to heal the pet, reminding Jo-won of his previous promise. Looking inside the basket, Jo-won notices a hand, soon plush rabbit toy sitting right next to the real horned bunny. Jo-won gently picks up the live rabbit, complimenting the adorable plushie while Dorothy giggles with glee. Preparing to heal the little creature, Jo-won places his hand gently over its body. A soft, radiant golden light shines from his palm, enveloping the pet in gentle restoration magic. As the healing magic flows into the rabbit, its horn suddenly begins to emit a brilliant glow of its own. Surprised, Jo-won watches the strange light fade away, realizing Gus never mentioned anything about horned rabbits reacting to magic. He recalls asking Gus about the strange horned creature during their archery lesson the previous day. Jo-won reflects on what Gus told him about horned rabbits, recalling that they are magic beasts inhabiting deep forests and fields. While wild magic beasts can be extremely dangerous, Gus explained that raising them from a young age makes them harmless domestic pets. However, Jo-won wonders why Gus never mentioned anything about the rabbit's horn emitting a strange golden light when magic is used. Gently petting the little rabbit, Jo-won soft-spokenly asks if the creature poses any hidden danger to his family. Determined to protect Lizzie and Dorothy at all costs, Jo-won gets confused when the bunny unexpectedly lets out a squeaky sound. Leaning closer, he asks if the creature can understand human speech, only to be met with more innocent squeaks. Concluding that it's just a normal pet, Jo-won resolves to ask Gus about it later as Dorothy eagerly asks him to name the rabbits. Dorothy points at both the live horned bunny and her new stuffed plushie, asking her father to pick pretty names for both of them. Thinking carefully while Dorothy waits in suspense, Jo-won comes up with a clever theme based on his daughter's name. He officially names the real horned rabbit Oz, creating a fun reference to the Wizard of Oz. He then names the cute stuffed rabbit doll Toto, much to little Dorothy's surprise and delight. Beaming with absolute joy, little Dorothy proudly holds up the basket and declares the trio as Oz, Toto, and Dorothy. She runs around the yard in sheer excitement, chanting the names of her beloved pets as her parents watch with warm smiles. Watching their daughter brim with happiness fills Lizzie's heart with joy as she laughs along with Dorothy's giggles. Meanwhile, panic and unsettling rumors begin spreading rapidly among the villagers in the nearby settlement. Terrified locals whisper that the chief's son rode to the city for help, terrified by old tales of goblins slaughtering everyone in sight. One anxious villager frantically insists they should abandon the town immediately, admitting he's far too terrified to even sleep at night. Elsewhere in the village, a woman complains bitterly about being forced to clean a public carriage that nobody ever uses. The elder sternly reminds her that if goblins invade, that carriage will be their only means of emergency escape. The elder berates her, explaining that using their personal cart would spark rumors that the chief's family is abandoning the village. He commands her to shut up and quietly secret hoard food supplies onto the carriage when no one is watching. Walking away in frustration, the elder curses under his breath that nothing seems to be going according to his plans. He recalls how poorly his secret meeting with an information broker turned out recently. The broker had only asked about the strength of mages in surrounding villages, frustrating him because healing mages are so exceedingly rare. Overwhelmed by anxiety and anger, the man kicks a pebble across the dirt path in pure irritation. Deep in the forest, Gus peers through dense foliage as ferocious goblin roars echo all around him. He observes two bloodthirsty goblins violently tearing into each other amidst an increasingly tense atmosphere. Realizing that internal mutiny has erupted inside the pack, Gus notes that the monster's suppressed hunger and violent lust have exploded. He knows exiled rogue goblins will immediately march toward human settlements containing women, but worries it's happening too soon. If the monsters attack before the guild adventurers arrive, his scheme will fall apart, forcing him to consider using his emergency bait to redirect them. He desperately searches his mind for a suitable distraction to divert the bloodthirsty horde away from the main village. A chilling light flashes in his eyes as he settles on the perfect sacrificial target, Jo-won's isolated homestead. Gus reflects on little Dorothy's past, remembering how she used to hide in fear and never smiled around strangers. Though he acknowledges it's a pity after seeing her finally learn to smile around Jo-won, he coldly refuses to let guilt stop his plan. He rationalizes that since Lizzie and Dorothy are complete outsiders, sacrificing them to protect the village is a logical trade-off. A painful memory surfaces in his mind as he recalls his deceased father's tragic final words. His father had warned him that while he was a perfect hunter, he lacked basic human empathy, which would ultimately make his life miserable. He remembers his father apologizing with deep sorrow for shaping him into a ruthless, cold-hearted killer. Standing in the dark forest, Gus mentally rejects his father's words, asserting that his cold life as a hunter is entirely perfect. With a twisted, manic grin, the ruthless old hunter declares that pursuing the thrill of the hunt at any cost is his true definition of happiness. Gus proudly reflects on having found a worthy disciple who can inherit all of his lifelong hunting skills. He envisions his teachings taking root inside Jo-won, molding him into the ultimate, ruthless hunter. Spying on the exiled goblins, Gus confirms that the angry monsters are marching directly toward the village. Knowing he must intervene, he reaches inside his cloak and pulls out a secret pouch stamped with red wax. A dark, scheming grin appears on the old hunter's face as he prepares to execute his contingency plan. Meanwhile, out in the woods, Jo-won uses a live rabbit tied to a tree as bait for his hunting practice. Standing at a distance, he draws back his bow and takes careful aim at the tethered target. Later, while preparing his hunt, Jo-won notices that his former hesitation and disgust toward killing animals have completely vanished. Carrying his fresh catch through the forest, he realizes he is adapting seamlessly to the harsh realities of this new fantasy world. Suddenly, Jo-won brings his feet to a dead stop as an unfamiliar sight catches his attention. Looking off toward a dense, uncharted section of the woods, he realizes he has never explored that particular area before. Seeing that he still has plenty of daylight left, he decides to take a quick detour and check out the unfamiliar terrain. He contemplates setting up a few animal snares along this new path to increase their daily meat supply. Weapon in hand, he cautiously treads deeper into the dense wilderness, staying alert for any signs of prey. Pushing through the overgrown leaves, he notes that this untamed part of the forest shows absolutely no signs of human activity. Stepping into a quiet clearing, he begins to think the area is completely devoid of wild game. But out of nowhere, a large wild roe deer bursts from the thicket and leaps right past him. Spooked by his presence, the nimble creature darts through the trees at full speed. Spotting the large deer, Jo-won's eyes widen as he calculates how much meat it would provide for his family. Refusing to let such a valuable prize escape, he immediately sprints after the fleeing animal. Sprinting at full speed through the brush, he skillfully knocks an arrow onto his bow without slowing down. Narrowing his eyes, he focuses all his concentration on lining up a clean shot while staying on the run. Confident that he can land the shot while moving, he fails to notice a thick tree root sticking out of the ground. His foot catches the root and he tumbles head over heels, crashing face first into the dirt with a loud thud. Groaning in disappointment, he pushes himself up from the ground, lamenting that the deer has completely escaped. But as he picks himself up, something unusual pressed into the soft dirt catches his eye. Looking closely at the ground, he discovers a trail of strange, misshapen footprints stamped into the mud. Inspecting the sharp claw marks, Jo-won immediately realizes that whatever made these tracks was definitely not human. Raising his bow in defense, he notes that the tracks are still extremely fresh, meaning the creature passed by very recently. Crouching low, he cautiously follows the trail of footprints deeper into the forest to investigate the threat. Meanwhile, old Gus limps hurriedly through the trees on his injured leg, breathing heavily as he moves. Glancing behind him, the old hunter makes sure he's maintained enough distance from his pursuers. A furious pack of red-eyed goblins snarls and thunders through the forest, relentlessly chasing right behind him. In his hand, Gus clutches a pouch of potent musk deer powder, a pungent scent capable of driving goblins into a rabid frenzy. With a swift flick of his wrist, he scatters the glowing yellow powder into the air to spread its irresistible scent. The lead goblin inhales the aromatic powder, its nostrils flaring as the potent scent takes hold of its instincts. Its eyes flash with bloodlust and wild rage, completely succumbing to the overwhelming frenzy induced by the powder. Driven completely insane by the scent, the entire horde shrieks and roars as they charge forward like a wave of destruction. As the earth trembles beneath the rushing monsters, Gus smirks, knowing they are rapidly approaching their target. Leading the murderous pack straight toward Jo-won's home, the wicked old hunter silently urges the monsters to follow him closely. Jo-won continues following the trail of strange, monster-like footprints stamped into the dirt path. A sudden wave of intense dread washes over him, making his heart race as a knot forms in his stomach. Driven by a dark premonition, he hastily scrambles up a rocky slope to look out across the forest. Reaching the high vantage point, he gazes toward the path ahead, his heart sinking in disbelief. Even though he's never explored this section of the woods before, he instantly recognizes where the trail is heading. Pure horror strikes his core as he realizes the dangerous footprints lead straight toward his own home. Leaping off the rocks, Jo-won sprints forward with everything he has, not caring what kind of creature left those tracks. He only knows that those monster prints are leading straight toward the cottage where Lizzie and Dorothy are waiting. Desperately sprinting through the trees, he inwardly begs whatever higher power exists not to tear his family away from him again. He fiercely thinks that if God intended to destroy his happiness, he should never have given him a second chance at a loving family. Tears stream down his face as he runs like a man possessed, begging for the safety of his wife and daughter. Meanwhile, back inside the cottage, little Dorothy carries Oz in her shirt pouch, telling the bunny they'll eat as soon as Dad returns. She scolds the little horned bunny when it tries to sniff the hot stew, warning it not to sneak food early. Gently pushing the bunny back down into her cloth pouch, she playfully tells it that bad behavior means big trouble. She asks Oz if the pocket is cozy, proudly showing off the brand new pouch shirt her mother sewed for her. Heading toward the open front door, Dorothy lets her mother know she's going outside to wait for her father's return. Lizzie calls out from inside, reminding her daughter not to forget the safety rules Jo-won taught her. Trotting across the grassy yard, Dorothy happily tells Oz how happy her dad gets whenever she greets him at the gate. She declares that she can never miss welcoming her father home, while the horned bunny tilts its head in curiosity. Suddenly, heavy thudding footsteps echo outside the gate, making Dorothy excitedly think her father has already arrived. She reaches her tiny hand toward the wooden latch, eager to swing the bamboo gate open to greet him. But just as her fingers touch the wood, she suddenly stops in her tracks as a vital memory flashes through her mind. She remembers her father's strict warning never to open the gate without checking who is on the other side first. Whispering to herself that she didn't forget, she leans forward to peek through the narrow gaps between the wooden posts. She expects to see her father kneeling down to meet her eye level, as he always does whenever he comes home. But instead of her father's gentle face, a ghastly green monster with glowing red eyes stares directly through the gap at her. The little girl turns deathly pale and trembles uncontrollably in sheer terror, realizing with horror that it isn't her dad. The grotesque monster lets out a terrifying, guttural chuckle as it peers through the bamboo fence at the helpless child. Dripping saliva, the monster shoves its long, razor-sharp-clawed hands right through the wooden fence to grab her. The sharp black claws stretch further into the yard, reaching directly for the helpless little girl's throat. Overwhelmed by sheer panic, Dorothy's legs freeze up completely, rendering her unable to move or scream as the claws close in. Tears pool in her wide, terrified eyes as the reflection of the bloodthirsty monster's hand draws closer and closer. Suddenly, Jo-won bursts out from the forest clearing like an enraged beast, screaming his daughter's name at the top of his lungs. Spotting the hideous monster towering right over his gate, Jo-won's eyes lock on to the horrific scene. Seeing a vile goblin trying to snatch his crying daughter through the wooden fence, a wave of unstoppable fury explodes inside him. Seeing his precious child in mortal peril, our MC channels pure, overwhelming rage and rockets forward at terrifying speed. Launching himself high into the air, he aims a deadly, earth-shattering dropkick right at the monster's head. Roaring with righteous fury, Jo-won slams his foot squarely into the goblin's skull with devastating physical force. The impact crushes the monster instantly into the hard ground, smashing it face first into the soil with sheer, brutal strength. Standing tall over the groaning, broken monster, Jo-won radiates an overwhelming aura of absolute protection and death. Leaving the crushed goblin bleeding on the grass behind him, Jo-won immediately rushes over to the fence toward his daughter. Seeing her father standing outside, little Dorothy bursts into relieved tears, crying out that her dad has finally arrived. Seeing that his precious daughter is unharmed, Jo-won lets out a deep breath of relief, thankful that he made it in time. He begins reassuring her that she's safe now, but his sentence cuts short as a terrifying sound echoes from the forest. Turning his head sharply toward the woods behind him, Jo-won's instincts instantly flare up in warning. Emerging from the dense foliage, a relentless wave of furious, bloodthirsty goblins thunders straight toward his home. Realizing that ranged weapons won't stop a horde at close quarters, Jo-won unhesitatingly tosses his bow and quiver to the ground. Unsheathing his sharp hand axe from his belt, he grips the handle with lethal intent. Stepping over the fallen monster, Jo-won calmly marches forward, not caring whether there are dozens or hundreds of them. Consumed by pure, terrifying rage, our MC locks eyes with the incoming horde, swearing to annihilate every last one of them to protect his family.